And what we have for you, I have some of the standards right here. For those of you that don't have those or don't have
Math, 6 through 12, September 22nd, p.m.
That's what it is.
What is it?
Okay. This is the math standards. Somebody else? Oh, I'm sorry, I need to take that post-it note off there. I'll take it off, I'll put it there.
You're going to table that, right, Megan?
What, anybody else need a copy? What is it? This is the standards. Everybody have their own copy?
If you have an extra later,
I'm gonna lay that one here just in case. I'm gonna lay the second one down this direction. And then in addition, I'm gonna hand you these like a protocol. Oh, in writing. Lay that these this way. Oh, I'm sorry. Right.
So are you, you said you were in Minnesota? I recognize, I'm sticking to.
Oh, look, she's from York.
Yeah. But I still hear that Minnesota,
Where happened in Minnesota?
There was more
I'm very northwestern corner, first in Minnesota. Like closer to here. But I think
welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful lunch. Everybody got out and enjoyed a beautiful day. I hear a rumor that it's gorgeous outside. So that's one thing about a walk down to the cafe. After lunch, now that we've gotten to walk, get some fresh air, good food, I thought we would walk through the protocol as far as we were planning for these groups and they were talking with facilitators about how to facilitate a group. This is the process and the plan that was discussed. And I will just want to share that with you.
We have a written down somewhere? Let's follow. Okay.
Okay, and it would include everyone having a copy of the grade 6 through 12 standards. And then, as a work group, determining what we're going to look at and come in what order. Hypothetically, I'm going to say hypothetically, okay? Hypothetically, if we were just to say, okay, let's begin with grade 6. And we just took grade 6, and then we would go through the protocol. Each person would review grade 6, and they would, on the, did I give you the record sheet for your concerns? She would go through grade 6, and on your record sheet, you would write what your concerns were. And then once that work is done, and even if we sat here for an hour, and everyone did that twice, we did that longer period. Then at the end of that, we would go around the table, and each person would get to comment on, this was one of my concerns. And you would go around, and then there would be discussion about that one concern. Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is just the process. This is
Very basic question. Is this copyrighted material?
That is public domain copyrighted material, which is what Jeremy just said to me.
Public domain and copyright are two different things.
Public domain.
So there is no copyright on this material.
Do you want me to read to you what it says, Brett? On the website. It's purely a real question. You want me to read it or?
Yes.
Okay. It says the Common Core state standards are provided under the terms of this public license. The Common Core state standards are
So it's a public license.
Yes, that's what it says.
Okay. My concern is that I would be reading the specifics of the law, which is the only thing I have so far, is that it's not licensed, it's not a license to the public. It has to be something that is in the public domain, which is not the same as a public license.
My understanding, but I don't really know, to be So I can hope it's the same thing with GLEs are right now.
The same thing,
GLEs.
Same thing on
the police.
First. Yeah.
As far as the license goes. You are granted a public license provided that you do not change these. If you want to consider changing these, then you can't use these anymore. That's the term of the public license.
Well, I think probably what we can do is get a real, I mean, and I hear what you're saying, Judge, really want to make sure that we get maybe a document that really says what we can and cannot do with that. And so we need to find
Yeah.
specifically what it says rather than, because I can say what I think, but.
Well,
Let's.
I did a lot, I'm not a lawyer,
Yeah, I know.
but I had to do a lot of work with patents and copyrights and all that. And so I have to be, I've been very, very careful.
I just Googled, Common Core copyright, and it brought up corestandards.org public license. And it says that the Common Core standards are provided under the terms of this public license, and Common Core state standards are protected by copyright and or other applicable laws.
That's what I was trying
That's
to read
the
when
common-
I was.
She did not.
Yeah,
That's,
I was in the middle of reading it, and that's why I said, you want me to continue, and we continue with public license versus public domain, so don't, let it go. Yeah.
And so why don't you do that?
The Common Core state standards are provided under the terms of this public license. The Common Core state standards are protected by copyright and or other applicable law. Any use of the Common Core state standards other than as authorized under this license or copyright law is prohibited. Any person who exercises any rights to the Common Core state standards hereby accepts and agrees to be bound by the terms of this license. The rights contained herein are granted in consideration of acceptance of such terms and conditions.
and what are the terms and conditions?
Well, if you want the license granted, the NGA Center for Best Practices and the Council of Chief State School Officers hereby grant the limited, non-exclusive, royalty free license to copy, publish, distribute, and display the Common Core state standards for purposes that support the Common Core state standards initiative. These uses may involve the Common Core state standards as a whole or selected excerpts or portions. And then it has a attribution copyright notice, material beyond the scope. It has a lot of stuff. If you're welcome to read my computer,
But
I'll
it was my understanding that there was no change in what allowed.
That's not what that says, Milan. It says in whole or artisan.
Where I said in whole or selected excerpts or portions.
Right.
So you may reproduce them, not you may change them and say that you're using common core.
Well, I don't think that it would be, I mean, this problem, we wouldn't be saying we would be using it on the board, we make some changes.
But you're taking a privately copyrighted product, putting your own tweaks in it, and saying you created it, you use. You stole copyrighted product.
Yeah, it says with respect to copyrighted works provided by this distribution, duplication, emailing, copy, printing is allowed only of the work as a whole. So if we take part of it, we no longer have that work as a whole anymore.
And I'm sorry, Nancy, could you say the copy, publishing, and distributing was only as a whole?
It says with respect to copyrighted works provided by the Penguin Group, USA Incorporated, duplication, distribution, emailing, copying, or printing is allowed only of the work as a whole. This is under material beyond the scope of public license, second paragraph.
Lastly, we received this letter from State Representative Barr, and B, the last paragraph is making a comment about Common Core.
You know what, I understand what Representative Barr said, and I understand that he's a legislator, and I understand that he was the sponsor of the bill, but just as he doesn't want, as he directing what this work group does, I think it's pretty ironic that he's trying to direct what this work group
Well,
does.
that's my question, is this any reflection of the law?
What does it say?
Well, don't maybe we need to get a legal interpretation of what it means. Because we can all say that none of us here.
What I'd like to do is I'd like to start from what we know we can work with. And those are the standards that Ann was talking about. Start from those and move forward.
What standards, yeah?
Rather than start from these other questions.
Yeah.
The ones that are getting copied.
What?
No, I mean, I mentioned the curriculum and alignment initiative, those are core high school competencies. So that's the end point that we have to make sure the work of 612 matches up to, so you have continuity.
Right, so what performance standards do you want us to work on?
I suggest we consider what we, we're here for the kids and we want the best standards, so let's find the best standards out there. We're going to defer to experts. I'm going to defer to Desi's experts. They brought in people from the Board Institute who, they grade standards all over the country. They gave them a letter grade. They gave Common Core a B+. Is that the best we're to shoot for our students? Is there not a better set of standards out there that we could use as a basic blueprint to start from, rather than having to fix everything that's wrong in here, start with something and give an A like Massachusetts?
So you want us to start with Massachusetts?
It's just a suggestion, I don't think it serves anybody's purpose to try and write out one standard from scratch. That's a waste of time. There's dozens of standards out there. And the Board Institute has rated all of the state standards. You can look at their ratings. You can look at comparable standards in Massachusetts, California, Indiana. Those are all rated very high in mathematics. Work in that kind of blueprint.
Well, I think part of the problem is the curriculum alignment initiative that Ann mentioned and that's in the bill. That did not get to the point of development where they had standards, and that's what Nancy's concerned with.
I understand. I'm not saying that's not standards-based. That's something that we were directed to.
Right, and it would be good to, since there were so many of our state citizens involved in that it would be good to consider what they had come up with over the course of their work. I think that was the idea, or maybe the intent, perhaps, behind the wording of the bill. I think it would be an excellent idea. I have said it several times to friends, but I did not have any, I didn't receive anything on the bill until after it was already approved. And then I should also mention that I personally went to Representative Barr many years ago, very concerned with what I saw coming down the pipe, as far as, I was just concerned with the process. So, just so that's out there and everybody knows.
I'm not really sure what you're saying.
I personally went to him
About what?
and asked him to look into the Common Core initiative.
What were your concerns?
I was concerned that, at the same time, I had attended a curriculum alignment initiative meeting just as an observer, and I thought it was going really, really well. And I also suggested that Dr. Chindy at Missouri State be contacted because I thought he did such a great job working with the wide variety of people in that room that day. It was just an observation. And I was disappointed, I guess, is the word, when I was reading through the applications for the Race to the Top grant and all the ancillary materials that go with the Common Core initiative.
Can I ask what the ancillaries, Race to the Top?
The memorandum of agreement that the governor signed. When I was reading those things,
Okay, then I'm not sure.
I had just come from a meeting where I was watching, recently within the previous year or so, where I was watching Missouri educators put their heart and soul into what they thought were, competencies for college. And I'm not saying that anybody, I would not know what's in somebody else's mind, that why they would choose to go with Common Core. A lot of people that I know and respect agree, support that cause, okay? I was just concerned, as that the state, we had just invested time and effort of our people, and then it seemed to be round filed because I didn't see any connection between what they had done and what I was reading in the Common Core standards.
Are you talking about the learning standards that were developed by the Missouri group and then put up and then just
They were
dropped
competencies.
like that?
They were competencies.
Yeah, and then it was on the Dusty website and then it was just taken down and then certified.
And the structure in the departments seemed to change at the same time, where it was led by the Department of Higher Education, and then it was changed, and I don't really understand what all was going on there, and I'm assuming that they were making an effort to like streamline things and make things more effective and productive. But I think, some things may have gotten lost. And,
Can I ask this for some clarification when you talk about the committee? What were the groups, was it a general committee, was it specific to mathematics, or?
it was just mathematics.
Okay, and so who was involved? Do you know who was some of the people might have been
No,
involved?
I just really paid attention.
Was it higher education, or? was
No, there
it-
were middle school teachers.
Sherry Adams was one of them.
I just was an observer. He made it very clear that I was just observing. And I did, and
Was it writing new standards for math?
it was looking at the competencies. The curriculum alignment initiative, the competencies that they were working on. They were talking content.
Because that is what I'm thinking of when there was another set of standards that were being written right before Common Core came out. Is that what you're thinking?
I probably didn't know about that.
So there was another set of standards between the GLEs, they were working on the GLEs and making another set at that time. And so, and I can tell you that because Sherry Evans was on that committee and I was on that committee as well. Okay, and so we were working on rewriting the Missouri standards at that point. Okay, so if that's the committee that you're talking about. or-
No, I was observing the curriculum alignment initiative work group.
That's what I want.
A work group. And I don't remember what building it was in, but it was here in Gem City.
Lisa, this is the disconnect for me, and I want you to help me with. I understand that you may not have liked the process, and that's what I hear a lot.
No,
Can she finish?
Yeah, sure.
Finish it, sure. Yeah.
I want to know the concerns with the standards themselves, with the content of the standards. If there's something in those standards that doesn't belong there, I think that is so pertinent, and that's what we need to come to agreement on. As far as the process of them being brought to Missouri, or the ramifications of them, of how it will affect teacher evaluations, how it will affect promotions, etc. I didn't think that was the scope of this committee. When I signed on to talk about the content of the actual standards, learning standards, performance standards that students would have to have. And I would love to know, I'd love to make the connection, because I still haven't made the connection as much as I've heard people talk about the Common Core. I haven't heard them talk about the content of the Common Core, of what is in this document and what it can do for classrooms. That's what can you help me with that?
I don't. Can you
What is
clarify
there-
your question?
Yeah, what is there about the content of this document that is not appropriate for Missouri students?
Well,
Tina suggested that we start as a group.
I understand that, but I'm trying to ask Lisa what there is, or Ann, or whoever.
I mean, I don't think
I thought we were supposed to look at the standards.
No, but they're asking not to, so I'm asking.
Sorry, it's not what the bill says. We have to do what the law says.
Yeah, and I mean, so I'm tired of that, what's wrong with the standards, how much time do you have? Because we can start with a whole bunch of stuff, they're way too prescriptive, they've opened up the Black-White achievement gap, which I think is and should be a huge concern. The Black-White achievement gap, and the places where they've been tested. So I think, and so let me just try to offer something here. I think part of, at least I know, I'm not going to speak for Lisa, but for myself, frustrations come out when, you get a law that says, develop and recommend new standards, right? So then you get this thing, and it says, here, for the review of the standards, you get to write down the standard designation, your question, and then a place, for you to get your answer. That's not what I think is a process that's developed and recommend. So, as far as, just taking, if this document seems to assume that we're just going to take the standards that are there, and go through them, and that the burden is somehow on us to say, well, it shouldn't say this, it shouldn't say that, everything has to be able to prove the quadratic formula using the complete square technique, which is pretty prescriptive and can't be more than this far away from our curriculum. But, but just discussing, whether stuff like that is appropriate or not, I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves. And so I think from that standpoint, it's not that we, or anybody, wants to say that, this needs to all be about process, but when you have these disrespectful processes, then that's where people get hung up on the process. And, so I feel like, that needs to be respected and acknowledged, that, when we're looking at this and people are saying, we're going to, or our job is to develop and recommend, standards, things that are appropriate for kids to learn. And I know when I was practicing law, we were all tied. When somebody's making an argument against you, if you let them control the argument, you might as well just go home. So, the idea that we would be controlled by a blueprint like this, not working for me.
Can I ask the difference between that and starting with limitations?
Well, I think she was responding to a question that, and I could say that too, I could come in and say, well, yes, I think it would be good to start with something that's been tested. I think it would be good to start with something that has a track record. Now, I mentioned Massachusetts. I guess I could say Minnesota.
Because it was really highlighted.
Yeah.
My understanding is that we were going to watch the slideshow that we started with, and then we were going to develop some group protocols for the way.
Right. We're trying to work here.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we skipped a step.
Okay, we completed the PowerPoint.
Right.
So we made it through. And now we are to developing norms on how we're going to have the conversation. After lunch, actually, I simply showed you the protocol that had been developed on walking through and looking at the standards. The standards that are currently in place. So, prior to us talking about the protocol and the standards, we should establish norms. How are we going to take turns in the conversation?
Yeah, I just think we need some norms in terms of maybe a moderator that will identify the next person who gets to speak, and then maybe a common signal that you let the moderator know you'd like to say something. That way we're not all just interrupting one another and talking over each other.
Because all voices are people.
And I'm still struggling with how we're going to start the 6th grade when we don't know what K-5 is doing.
Well, I think they're talking at the same time about some of the same issues. And do they have to blend together?
Yes.
I agree with her point here. We need to have established the, for lack of a better word, the liaison who's going to be responsible for carrying the word back, and the co-liaison or assistant liaison. And that would be the perfect person then to actually guide the discussion in terms of having an orderly process. So perhaps that might be the next step, is to because we need to do that anyway.
Are we talking about these,
The liaisons,
two people here?
yeah, have them as, since, have them as the people who will try to keep order, or facilitate, yeah, keep the flow of discussion going in a productive manner. That's how I prefer to say it.
I would add that the reason the liaison was not nominated by the group until tomorrow was because the thought was it would be nice to have a couple of days to get to know each other, get to know the styles of the people you're working with, so that the group could select someone that they were comfortable with representing them in a variety of meetings. So that was the thought because for tomorrow.
That makes sense. Do we know the dates of these meetings? Because that will likely dictate.
The public meetings, I'm not aware of those meetings. I'm not going to say they haven't, but I haven't seen them.
Well, this meeting was called on the 22nd of September, and the law says the first meeting must be held within 30 days. And we guarantee that first meeting is not going to be any later than October 22nd. It may be sooner. but it won't be later.
And I don't necessarily think the person that's this person needs to be the moderator and more in the process here.
I think that was something.
So I think we have that. I think she's the facilitator of that. The meetings and that liaison gives us money. It's two totally different people.
And perhaps we can come up with a common signal or way to let
I thought we were doing pretty well with that, people were raising their hands and stuff, not anything, anybody, or anything. So I thought we were just talking about whether this is a problem.
There's been lots of interruption meetings, people are trying to speak, and I know it's just because everybody's passionate about what we're saying, but we do have to make sure we stop and let somebody finish a thought, whether you are agreeing or just stop and let them finish their thought so that you can.
And I just as bad as anybody else has got sometimes interrupting and don't mean to. If I do that, I'm apologizing up front, okay? I don't mean to do that. But I think that we do need to have some norms about that, and also about all voices being heard. Because I know sometimes we get really passionate, and we'll talk, and we're not allowing all voices to be heard. And I think we also have to listen to all voices, not just hear them, but listen. We may not agree. Okay, but part of what we talked about before, about an argument, listening to both sides and then making about an argument rather than coming with preconceived notions, to really sit down and listen to each other's viewpoints. And I don't know if we need to develop some norms or some protocols around that to make sure that all voices are heard. And also, in the future, when other people are not here, they're not here today, to make sure that they are aware of those norms and protocols, that we follow those. And we develop something that we can all live with.
Which brings up the consensus, which I know was brought up in the PowerPoint earlier, and everybody, probably make sure that we all have the same understanding of what consensus is, that it's not, necessarily what every person wants individually, but it's something that we all have.
So what do we need to do at this point to try to get that accomplished?
set some ground rules for next.
Number one is listen and let the other person complete their point before the next person joins in. That's what we're doing.
So how do we determine who gets to go next? After we listen?
So I like the idea of appointing a moderator.
Would she be moderated?
No, it's just not a member of the board.
Oh, sorry, you want it to be then?
You're a member of the board.
May I ask why?
Because the moderator has tremendous power to direct conversation by either comment on people or not.
The family and the work group would do that. I'm playing devil's advocate.
I know.
I mean, we all have our own thoughts, so what do you think would make her more biased on who she
She
wants
was locked in
to
and prepare materials that are on that city that clearly have a goal in mind. It's not the goal of this work group because we have not even discussed what our goal was. So I think this work group needs to pick a moderator who can be, who's part of the group that's appointed to do this.
Could I help? And this is just me. I think that we have to be really careful because sometimes, like you said, the moderator can drive the discussion. And we don't want anybody that's going to drive just their side of the discussion, that we want to make sure that it's somebody that's not really, because to be open and willing and to listen, because I think that's really important to do, is to listen to what everybody has to say. And I know you say that she came in with a track, but she's just doing handouts as far as I know. She's involved in the process, and I don't really know. So I know nothing.
Could we do this? Could we do this in interest-based bargaining? So you have someone, seriously, you have someone who records who raises their hand. And they just know what order those people are in, and then they go around. Why don't we just do that? Just know who has raised their hand on an issue, and then that's the order you speak. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. I nominate Debbie as the moderator to keep track of that. She says she doesn't know what's going on here. Clarify, because I'm going to leave her with guidance.
Well, I guess that's going on, but I think there's more going on here than I'm aware of.
My only concern is if she's trying to keep track of who's raising hands and all that, she might miss out on the actual content that's being discussed, and then we might miss her input, which is the main reason that she's here today.
I am easily distracted, so I may not be the best person to keep track of any sort of tally.
So are we still opposed to her keeping track of who raises their hand?
I'm not opposed to that. I mean, if there's a motion, and if we decide to use raising your hand, or whatever it is, yeah, I mean, I'm not, opposed to, Deborah's next, and then Kathy Ever.
Yeah.
And then, okay, and then next I saw Nancy, and here.
Yeah, I think so far she's made sure and let everyone that needed to talk. That's why I was here, because she hasn't commented on anything, she hasn't put her opinion on anything. She's just kind of led.
And your first name is, I'm sorry.
My name is Tina.
Tina.
Tina Holsey. And may I add just a couple of things, just strictly for your information? And honestly, I woke up at 3 a.m. worried about this meeting this morning. So if you appoint a moderator, it's not going to hurt my feelings in any way, shape, or form. But I would, just for your information, let you know, number one, I do not work for DESE. A couple of years ago, I was invited by DESE to be a facilitator for MOLEAD, which is the new leadership institute for principals that has been across the state. And as part of that facilitation, we were trained to facilitate. So DESE has this group of trained facilitators. I want you to know I received a phone call at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, but my Friday afternoon was a couple of weeks ago. Mine wasn't this last Friday. And I am sure I was the bottom of the list. So just that. I work for a non-profit, non-governmental, private accrediting agent. We voluntarily accredit schools that voluntarily go through an accreditation process. It is an international protocol. But anyway, that just being said, you need to know a little bit of background. But I am good with whatever you decide.
I nominate Tina to be the moderator of our discussion, at least for today.
I would second that.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
You want to try to pay close attention. And what Deborah's done is she's made eye contact with me and raised her hand. So you notice that's the only time I've spoken is to say Deborah would like to weigh in. So if you make eye contact and raise your hand, I will write it down and go to who speaks next. Is that fair enough?
That's fair. That's exactly what's needed. You know, I never do here.
I would have slept better.
We did not hear you.
start with Common Core is because that's what teachers are working with right now. And so, I'm not saying you have to do Common Core, but that's what we're working with right now. And so, as educational professionals, we can say what's working, what's not working, what's above our kids' heads, what's not above our kids' heads, what we feel like they need that's not in here, and it just gives us a starting point. We have to have some sort of starting point. And to me, which we can do it if the group thinks it's best, but to me, starting with a different state that we're not familiar with is extra work on us that isn't necessarily needed.
Dr. Fred.
How is that any more difficult than working with, because I'm not familiar with a couple of it in Common Core either. So I would be equally unfamiliar with another standard, except that one, other ones have been graded and by an accredited, recognizable, independent source. So why not start with something that's the best? Since we're unfamiliar with both. And that's why we want to get off a good start from that type of point.
Nancy.
I'm in agreement with you because over 70% of the school districts in Missouri have aligned to that. So that is where they're starting from, and that is what is known, and that is currently what is in use. So we can talk about it and see where it goes. How it would change the landscape of the classrooms you're currently in.
What I have right now is Ann, then is it Maggie? No, Maggie. Kathy. I'll answer Kathy and Maggie. I guess it's in my seating chart. Ann, Kathy, and Maggie.
Okay. Well, by that rationale, we should never have gotten Common Core because we didn't do any third writing standards for a number of years, and Common Core required a major shift. As I understand it, we've shifted standards approximately every 4 years. We're used to shifting standards. So there's no, and the law said develop standards, so there's this expectation that new standards will be coming. I don't think the sunk cost argument is a valid reason to say that.
Kathy, you're.
But I don't think she said stick with Common Core. It was like, look at Common Core because, and I would say, I know you said you changed standards about every 4 years, and I've been in the process all of those times. And I am the father, but part of that is that you always start with where you're at, okay, and what people are doing. And then you make a decision as to what we need to change, what we need to modify, whether it's something totally different, but you start with where you're at, knowing what the baseline knowledge of the kids know, okay, what they've done before you move on. So when I started in the Middle Child Behind that came around 2004. So we started writing this, and then the next revision, and then there was another revision in process when the Common Core came on board. So we always start with where we're at, find out where we need to be, look at where our goal is that we want our kids to be, and then how do we get from here to here.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, we're on Maggie, and then after Maggie is Margaret.
A couple of points. One, sometimes starting where you're at when you see that it's not succeeding and trying to then improve on where you're at, it takes a lot longer than you start at a good starting point. Many of the school districts have only been in the Common Core for the past year, and so they're not fully ingrained. I think in the school districts, I personally do not teach at high school, I teach at the college level, but I've heard from a lot of high school teachers that are not very thrilled at all with the Common Core. And so I don't think we're doing those teachers a disservice if we look at standards that are rated better to, as a starting point. It makes our job a lot less difficult when we start with the best. And also, operate, I think, in the issue of Common Core.
Thank you, Maggie. We've got Margaret and then Julie.
Grade level expectations that were developed. We came back to the table, looked at those, tweaked those, and we came out with version 2.0 grade level expectations. And then now, the Missouri Learning Standards, grade level expectations are aligned to the Common Core. So even though we haven't put a number on them, it's sort of like version 3. But again, we've always taken what we had and improved by looking at NAEP, by looking at ACT performance, by looking at other things that we've done within Missouri. We've used the data from Missouri students. So when you say you don't know if our current learning standards, our current expectations are successful, no, we don't know. But they are what's going to be assessed this spring and next year until we can recommend different ones. So, I mean, I don't think there's any way to know if Common Core is successful. We don't have the test results. We don't have that data to make that determination.
Thank you, Margaret. We have Julie, and then Lisa, and then Dr. Gray.
So 2 points, and I'll try to go really quick. So first, as to the notion that we start with what we have and just make changes from that. That is so fundamentally not what happened when we brought Common Core in. It's not. I mean, the standards were adopted before they were written, and the crosswalks were written later. And I just don't see any reason for anything to argue that facts are different than that. The second thing is, we do have evidence as to the effectiveness of Common Core and what it's going to do. If you look in places where they have been using it longer than the black-white achievement gap has dramatically increased. I think that's a concern. When I look at it, I think, I can't tell you what the mechanism is as to why this happens. I only know that it is happening. And it's not because black kids are inherently less capable. I'm certain.
Thank you, Julie. We have Lisa and Fred.
I was just going to say something that I am personally working on that I think is something to be aware of for everyone is when we use words like good and bad and whatever you're talking about, it can put the other person on the defensive because they have devoted so much of their time and efforts to working on things.
Withdraw. My God, I'm sorry. Oh, there is one thing. From a proper English perspective, you do not say where is something at. It's just where is something. Okay? Forget the at. That really irritates me. Not just me, but anyone who is a English practitioner. It's redundant. You don't need the at. Where?
Thank you. I had a question. Were you speaking about the black-white achievement gap? Did you say that since Common Core standards were enacted, the achievement gap has grown? And then you think it's because of that? What research where's that cited?
So one place you can look is New York, where they've been using it for a couple of years now. They have 2 years of test results, and the gap has grown, and not just a little bit. And I mean, the average score went way down, but that's not, and that's something you could talk about, but that isn't what I was talking about. I was talking about the gap.
So is it that the white children are growing at a greater rate? So, and the African children are staying here, and that's.
Well, they all went down. They all went
So
way down. So everybody went down, so nobody was growing. But the gap between the average scores is much wider. And I believe I specifically said, I don't think we know the mechanism, meaning we can't explain why it happened.
only that it is happening. And so when I look at that, you know, there might be a whole bunch of, you know, potential explanations for it.
There could be a correlation, but a cause effect hasn't been identified.
Well, right, but, you know, when you look at it, I mean, there's nothing else that's changed. So it's something in the Common Core, I don't know what it is.
Okay, I think I have Tiffany or you next. Yes, but mine wasn't on that, so.
Okay, Tiffany, and then Kathy.
We could not hear your conversation and say where you were getting the information.
Oh, New York, it's all, it's.
Well, that's what you're saying, we just.
Yeah, New York is the, and that's not the only place, but that's the one that has the most data because they have a couple of years of Common Core assessments and they've been using it. And, so the gap is growing.
Didn't do that website or anything, or just particular.
Oh, well, no, I mean, you can read, there's articles in the Washington Post, there's lots of places. Where now it's been reported. So.
I could just couldn't hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no, well, I apologize, I was kind of looking that way, but, yeah, I was just trying to provide that information, because that, you know, I teach at a very high functioning, you know, majority Black and brown school, so when I think about this, you know, I think, you know, is it some kind of cultural bias? Well, that's, you know, obviously that's the most likely suspect. If I had to put money, that's where I put it. But, you know, with that said, I don't really care what the mechanism is. If it's going to make my kids look worse than they deserve to look, you know, I'm going to be super unhappy about that. So it is a concern for me.
Thank you, Julie. Margaret is next.
Tiffany's probably next.
I was just gonna say, if we do start with something other than Common Core as a jump off point, if that's what the group decides to do, I think it's very important that we keep in mind the knowledge that our kids will have right now. Because we could say 8th graders should be able to do such and such, but if they haven't already received or are not currently receiving the background that they need to be successful there, we need to know that too. So regardless of whether you start with it or not, you're going to have to look at Common Core, and you're going to have to decide what it is that kids know now when you decide whether to.
Okay, and out of respect for all voices being heard, should we maybe start right here and let everyone give maybe 2 thoughts as we go around? Because there are several people who have not contributed, and we don't have to do that, but we do have people who haven't contributed if we want to hear all voices. Yes, no, yes?
Sometimes when a conversation is going on, there may not something when it comes to my turn that I want to say right then. It's much more appropriate for me to respond to something that's been said if I have to say something when it's my turn, going down the road.
Could we make this as a protocol after a period of time, that we just go around the room and say, no, I'm fine, you know, that, and like you said, you had nothing to say about that, said, no, I'm fine at this point, and go around so that we can make sure that we're not overlooking that. Yeah, just a quick check-in. Yes, quick check-in.
So many minutes.
Yeah.
Loss is not critical.
I didn't see your hand.
It's right here.
Yes, and that was just my thought, so that every once in a while, everyone have a voice, if possible. You can still pass.
When I was,
Oh, I'm sorry.
when I was
Go right ahead.
What I was going to say is, I trust that everyone at this table can have something to say, except for Fred, who sits here. I mean, you know, I don't mind us checking in, but sometimes I just sit back and I want to absorb what all of you are saying, and I really don't have something that we can stop and say, Nancy, are you okay? You know, that's my opinion.
I'm good. Is that the consensus of the group? Julie?
Well, I was to take it back, I was gonna, you know, respond. I think Tiffany's point is well taken, but I did just want to make, you know, because it's actually really important for them. So, for example, yes, this is the year that Common Core goes into effect in Missouri. We all know that. And some districts have already started doing it, but, you know, but if you haven't, or, you know, for whatever reason, you know, there's not a phase in. There wasn't a phase in. So I can pick out my algebra 2 kids
right now, and I can say, so you guys remember all that stuff that you learned about exponential functions in Algebra 1? And the answer is, well, no, they don't. Because back when they had Algebra 1, it wasn't in there. So, I get that we have to think about, what we're aligning to, but the Common Core hasn't been live long enough to really put that in there. But with that said, her point is well taken, I would like to see, and I just said this, Common Core was not phased in, I would like to see whatever we do, if we are making, significant changes, that we do try to figure out, and I know that makes it more work, but it also makes it better if we phase it in and try to figure out, and I know that, small gaps you can deal with, but big giant units, and you know that, then you're left, you're in the classroom and you're like, okay, I got like 8 months with these kids and I gotta do all these things and then I gotta do all these other things too, and you end up just having to choose what you're just not gonna like do. And that would not feel good to me as a teacher, so.
Thank you, Julie.
I think that's an important point that Julie made. It's one of the reasons why we need to get with the people who are doing the earlier math as well, to make certain that there's not going to be a gap there, that the baton is going to be transferred well. And I think the sooner we do that, the better. I've been through many, many different systems, from the new math in the late 60s to every about 5 years there was a change. And the kids were the ones who suffered. We're here to make this new for the kids, get them smart and all of it, what to prepare for life in general, as well as all of the logic and communication skills and everything that math is appropriate for teaching. And I think the concept of phasing in for this will be very good, as well as coordination so that it's from the beginning to the graduation of high school, a continuum of their advancement of learning and appreciation. Otherwise, the kids get turned off real quickly. And while it isn't to coddle children, because heaven knows I love to get a good test, but it is to ensure that they never lose their love of mathematics. And right now, there's not many of them.
Thank you, Fred. Kathy?
Well, and I understand what you're saying about the phase out, I think that is important. But if I'm not mistaken, doesn't the law also say that we will be tested in the year 2016-17 according to the new standards, which gives less days of time than we had before. So, while we can say that, and I can agree with that, that's a good thing. That's if we are continuing to go back to the law, I believe that law said that it will be tested in 2016-17. And I could be wrong, but we have to go back and revisit that. But what we're saying about kids not loving mathematics, that's nothing new. And that's been, like I said, I started teaching a long time ago. And it's been a long time, but kids have always been initiative students. And so we have to do something about turning them around, making some changes, because our kids don't have, unfortunately, the love of mathematics. And Julie, I know what you were saying about kids, and the gaps they have from Algebra 2 to Algebra 1, like the basic missing gaps. No matter what shift we make, some of those things are going to happen, but we just have to do our best safeguard for the sake of our kids and also for the sake of the teachers. We want to do a good job with kids to not have those huge gaps. Nobody wants those gaps.
Thank you, Kathy. Fred,
That's
okay, I'm sorry. I lost track there for a moment. Nancy?
As a school board member, we actually, I think many districts started implementing these with kindergarten so that by the time that they were tested, so they backtracked and knew what year the actual testing would start. And so they backtracked to make sure that those kids would be ready when they had third grade, starting that curriculum so that those shifts did not make any curriculum. So I think there's a large number of districts who have done that. and invested the time and the effort and money to do that. In addition, the other thing I wanted to say was that even though they were not formal, completely implemented in the state of Missouri, I actually taught the common core with those kiddos that I had that it was an intervention class, so it's kids that their level was not mathematics. And it was a widely diverse group, because in St. Louis County, there are districts that bus from the city of St. Louis. So, wide majority of our students were in poverty, and certainly a lot of diversity. Because you narrow that focus and you teach fewer, you can teach them in depth, they do understand and they love mathematics. And so I had kids who actually wanted that second math, but they didn't start out wanting the second math class today because they didn't have their exploratory class to have it. But they end up loving it because they get it. Because it finally has when you can teach it in a variety of different ways. So I hope that we do keep the scope of each grade level narrow so that you can teach it in depth. That's what I hope that we do, that we don't inch deep and mile-wide it.
Thank you, Nancy. Julie?
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I'm sure that I'm sure you didn't mean to suggest that we have enough time because the 10th graders and 11th graders ready, that they've had all this stuff. You know, maybe the 3rd graders are ready, but you know, at the end of the chain, there hasn't been enough time. You know, these kids started school way before these standards were in place or even known or talked about. So, but you know, that's an interesting idea. You know, that when I first you know, heard tell, sorry for the grammar thing here, of the Common Core, you know, and I saw that, you know, fewer concepts taught more deeply. Having been, you know, part of a liberal arts university where we really promoted that very thing for our students, I was completely certain that I knew what it was until I saw the Common Core, and I really thought, you know, the way it's written at the upper end, it's not a mile wide word dimension, it's 2 miles wide and an 8 dimension. I don't see the depth. Now, perhaps in the lower level it is there, but I see at the upper end, you know, it's not that, but I would support that. I just don't, I think people look at it and they, you know, they sort of, you know, just think, well, this is what, you know, we're doing, and I think that can be some of what has happened with individual teachers and districts and classrooms making curricular choices. But I don't think that's inherent to what we have, so that's a concern for me.
Thank you, Julie. Kathy?
And the high school does have a lot of standards. The K through 8 was much more that we really go more in depth into the topics that you have. And when you get to the secondary level, we have a bunch of those standards. Okay, I think we'll all agree with that, and I think you're going to find that there's also a committee by NCTM that they're going to put together to look at the high school standards, because they also agree that we have way too many standards at the high school level. But I'm not so sure when I look at the Algebra 1 standards that they're that much different than what I used to teach in Algebra 1. Okay, there are a few things there that weren't there before, that I've heard in. And in Algebra 2, when I look at Algebra 2, when I started teaching, I'm not going to quite go through myself, but about 35 years ago, the Algebra 2 standards there are not hardly different than the Algebra 2 standards that I taught 35 years ago. So we say that and look at that, but when I really look at those standards, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, not a lot of difference than what I've always taught. Now, granted, I retired about 7 years ago, but I don't think it's changed that much. But those standards that I see and I look at it and algebra are very little different. I mean, there's a few things, but very little different than I always found.
Thank you, Kathy. Tiffany?
I agree with what you're saying on the farther end, that like in 8th grade. I feel like the 8th grade standards have changed quite a bit, but it's more in depth. Like, it's not just using the 10th grade theory, they have to discover the theory, they have to discover that relationship themselves and then apply it in all of these different things, which they didn't used to do. And so it's changed a lot, but I think my kids are coming out with a better level of understanding because of it. On algebra, I don't teach past algebra, they have like some years. And I do think you have a lot more there to cover, and I don't think that it's already done, but.
Hey, can I throw out just a suggestion for a moment? We've had a little over an hour of rich conversation. We've also just had lunch and a lot of iced tea. Shall we take a 10-minute break, walk around, and then kind of come back and maybe have a conversation about what our next steps are? We have two documents in front of us. It wouldn't hurt to spend a little bit of time on those two documents to kind of see where we need to start. 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and look at documents. Fair enough? What are we talking about? Unless we need to start back on conversation. I'm sorry, Julie. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right. Thank you. Let's stretch it out.
I see most of what's in there seems to be about the state of school, what they can and cannot do. So I'm wondering if I got a wrong link or somewhere in the middle.
That's what I really like, because we have a bit of last year,
Because
when we
it's
started
slow.
trying to phase it in with the cost and things like that, but we can implement it. And,
You are that's right.
You have a line number or something, how you find anything, Sean? Okay, let's look through what that.
Look at the third paragraph on there. And so it's always
I got it. They did the math.
but this cuts back and you know, kind of. So like for us, you know, we used to do a lot of work at the universities for all the motions. Well, good for you. Bless your heart. I used to do congregations like that.
All right. I think I was doing fine.
This, you know, it's kind of a question, you know, we thought we were married, so then, we include those, it's such a good none but then it's like, maybe I know.
I did ask that question.
well, either way, implementing new standards, I've been asked that it is time to spend on teachers. And it's actually come in. Sports classes, it's nice to there's going to be a lot more.
They want an introduction to the Common Core State Standards. Yes, sir. Oh, yeah. Well,
Or is it this morning, it's pretty interesting to see very versions like load things down, to see the curves, you have some warm layers, getting that cool air coming down to it.
On the document, when I did the find,
On that housing, that's where
one question on page 4.
you just go straight across that. Shut down memory lane, one day after, right?
Well, that's the other question about that.
There last weekend with my daughter.
So what, you go to your.
Yes. Starting freshman, Isn't there honors college, it's a very interesting concept. It's a way for the, like SEC tech schools, to compete with the Ivy Leagues. Some of the top talent. And for that, she just did Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I got my parents and all of us went to do, so far many grandkids, and my daughter,
I would just say,
went to Minnesota, and she's been in the league, so she kind of paid on that, and I mean, my family up there, so.
Well, this was parents' weekend, and I was amazed at the tailgating and. That's not a long chance that they have.
What is the relationship between this and what from Massachusetts we're talking about?
Very different. Okay, so Massachusetts is their standards.
Oh, you've got theirs?
No, I'm just saying, you're coming from Massachusetts, so their set of standards. This is simply saying, look, this is where we should all be aiming for by the end of high school. Let's start with core competencies from high school. They didn't work backwards and say, okay, we have to make each grade get there. They just said, whatever you're working on, this is where you should be aiming, because then your kids can come into our schools, they will need remedial coursework, they will have to have those 0 hours, which is part of the goal there. Too many kids take remedial courses.
You have access to the ones from Massachusetts as well?
Yes. Yes. There's a 1997 standard, and they use those right across the Common Core with tremendous success. And in fact, you got into Common Core, and they're like, well, we're going to play this, they fight, figure it back out.
It's possible to get a copy of that as well?
Yes. Yes.
Who's also in Minnesota.
They can print that out, I appreciate it.
And I'm not necessarily on Minnesota, wanting to speak about Minnesota, but not only are they at the top of the chart, and then they put it on the floor, regulation, not for that. And so, they're getting these literally at the top of the United States performance out of their math standards, and so, yeah, I love Minnesota.
So, now I know where it is.
But it's not at all, but on the.
I agree. A lot of times, I think that's
So I put it in the first time.
And one thing I really like about Minnesota, and I don't know if they were something.
I went to school with them.
And I love some.
Yeah, so they did or not.
They bring up the congress, so that, so that people are not laughing.
How did Minnesota versus Massachusetts?
I don't know, I don't remember the story on Minnesota, yeah, I don't remember, that, but I just know that Minnesota kept their math standards, they did not for it, they are at the top of the tier.
What's weird is that Massachusetts adopted the Common Core. What they've adopted are those that are, they call it a plus 15, and they used to pay 15% fee for half hour and equipment. So they not. They not.
I'm sorry. But I think that's happening on those Sundays. Because they immediately here.
So they threw on their own standards.
New junior, secondary ed.
If we look at their standards, we look at
I'm just saying, I just got this, but I don't know about standards, in Massachusetts.
No, I don't want to argue at all because their standards are Common Core.
No,
when we talk about that,
So what can you do?
very well. It says here that any application related to this. Or standards, we have copy of 2010 national best practices school offers all the I don't know, that's probably the document that's free off their website. So what I was trying to say is if I look for that slide, it's because these documents, the department talking about all the time, so I looked on that. I have no idea what's here. Just if you go to the website, you can print those 800, and then you got to scan that all the fees. I got to be 5 out of 5. Look at there. Look at what's supposed to be. You couldn't see it, didn't focus on it.
So I told everyone got to stretch their legs and sometimes it helps to get the blood circulating just a little bit. I am strictly throwing out a suggestion, but we have the 2 documents. What if we took 15 to 20 minutes, review them, talk to your neighbor, kind of a little work session discussion, and then come back and discuss? I mean, and I'm saying that simply because I'm hearing you discuss where we're going to begin. So do we need to look at what we have to decide where we begin? Or other recommendations for next steps?
Are you talking about how to collect this?
Yes, as we handed out, I think this was the document that Ann mentioned. And then we also have the standards. So if we looked at those and took a few minutes to take a look at those.
Could we also get the
Yes.
Massachusetts standards as well? The one that Adam was referring to?
The ones that we can pull those up electronically. I don't have access to those on paper. But if we just took a 20 to 30 minute work session and went through, took a look at some of those, would that be a good use of our time? Maybe I should ask that question. Yes, ma'am.
I guess my question was, it was brought up this morning, and we were going to ask somebody that knew, can we legally take the Common Core and can we change them? I think before we spend time looking at them and kind of tweak them, we need to find out if we can legally do that. Because if we spend days or weeks doing that, it's wasted time. Legally, we cannot do it.
Can I interrupt you all for just a moment? I apologize. I'm Scott. I'm a general counsel chief of staff at President Pro Tem Tom Dempsey. Brian Benson is with the Lieutenant Governor's office. Josh Foster is the chief of staff for Senator Henry, who is the Senate handler of the bill. And I apologize for the interruption, but if we could just offer a thank you to all of you for doing this on your own nickel. That was an oversight from the statute to try to remedy that with some funding for travel and so forth and the reconvening in January. Senator Dempsey, I'll let Brian speak for Governor Kender, we would just like to express our thanks and our hope that we come up with a product that we can all live with as much as possible. It's a very difficult undertaking. However, the legislature really doesn't have a plan B. So if these panels aren't able to come to some sort of compromise, some sort of ability to find something that they can sign off on, I don't think there'll be another set of panels next year. This is sort of it. Even the bill getting through the legislature, Josh and his task was a work of compromise and getting it this far. So a lot of writing on what you all do, what you say, and recommendations you come up with in the course of the next year. So thank you for taking the time. We're happy to serve as resources if you have questions, but the statute says our office is appoint, and after that, Desi will convene, and after that, it's up to you as the work groups. Statute says you will work for our office every month. So the responsibility belongs to you. To set your own schedule to do as you will. But if you have questions, we can probably give you advice for your minute. But again, just to plead with you, we hope you can find your way to a position that everyone can essentially agree with. I know it's difficult. I've worked in the Senate for quite a while, and we spend a lot of time arguing, and sometimes half the night we sit up and argue. But there are things hopefully from this panel. So thank you. I'll get a card. If anyone has questions, Brian, do you have any thoughts you want to?
No, the message that the lieutenant governor wanted to send was that, first of all, thank you for being here. It's unfair, but what you're doing is a sacrifice, and we appreciate it. Second of all, Desi convenes this first meeting. After that, you run independently of us, of their office, Desi, and anyone. You want to stress that point that the power is all. That's all I
How's that for a cheerful message?
I'll take a try, because I have several questions.
Oh,
I'll step up and see.
Sure. Thanks again. Good luck.
Asked about.
What about that legal point? That's all.
You have another card that we could pass around.
So in terms of legality as to putting anything from Common Core in your final report, is that kind of?
Well, it says we need the legal interpretation of their licensing language. We need somebody to sit down and take a look at it and say, what can you legally do with their documents?
Okay.
Because they have very specific terms.
We have two answers. One, sort of general counsel pro temp, but I'm not an education law expert. I can give you, like Todd's just sort of unresearched oversight, and then the second opinion from one you used to how I would interpret that is in your phenomenon, you're supposed to give us a report back. I think if the statute says it shouldn't contain copyright material, that report should not. I don't think there's any problem with looking at any document you want. I mean, you're adults, you have freedom of speech, you can read whatever you want. To comply with the statute, I would think of it in terms of your final report, more than what you think about or you research.
I think the question is more, what are their limitations according to their language? We don't have the legal understanding of copyright to understand that.
Yeah, okay, so on that, if you want something, some research done, two avenues I can suggest. One, the department could probably give you that. I realize there's a substantial amount, some analysts of distrust or concern about the department, so you might not want to do it. I would be happy if you can get the question preferably in email. Everybody kind of agrees with the question. I'd be happy to farm it out for us in the research department and get the legal opinion from them. Unless someone tells me that's a bad idea. I think I can get you a reasoned research opinion on that. I'm happy to try to facilitate that if that's used. But in terms of what's copyrighted and what's not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it's really an understanding of what their copyright language means. Legally, so we don't fully get it.
Yeah. My thought would be that if you don't plagiarize something in your final report, you just cut and paste from another document. I don't see it. I can't copyright the concept. So if you have to think, hey, something that's in a common core document makes a lot of sense, I'm going to tweak it and put it in my report. I don't think that would violate copyright law, but the statute. But again, I question you more in depth.
Well, our question is, could they copyright a concept?
I took trademarks in law school, not copyright law, so I don't know. Why don't you, I know this is probably timely, you're talking about what you talk about immediately after this time. I mean, if you want to shoot me an email, I will try to get you an answer as quick as I can. But I would encourage you have to start from somewhere, whether that's what currently exists, or if you want to go with what Massachusetts or Timbuktu has. I think you can probably do that. I don't think there's any danger in starting somewhere and using that as a springboard. So, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for your service. We will do our best to provide some remuneration, but we can't do that until we reconvene in January. I apologize for the oversight. So thank you for volunteering your time and your coordination and your money as a February.
No, I was just kidding. Usually I like to know going to do a job in conversation. But this is labor. This is labor.
And one other, you said, because there currently is.
Right, you have to look for 1997.
Well,
On the map, there was some additional grade level specifics given in 2004, but I think when you look at that online, it should be like plus 2004.
You could identify where the kids I'd like to have a copy.
Massachusetts has adopted a copy, so they're no longer using their standard.
Yeah.
So why did we start?
Because Common Core was rated B plus and their prior standards were rated A.
Julie was next. Julie?
Well, I was going to say in that regard, and I have to go back and check the identity of it, but there's at least one other state right now that is thinking about adopting the Massachusetts standards, and what they mean by that is not Common Core, but the Massachusetts standards prior to adopting the Common Core. So I do think that, there are others who are looking at this and saying, we think we want, standards with a track record.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask about the Massachusetts standards that you were referring to, because the 1997, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. But don't interrupt anybody. Don't interrupt anybody, because I know the original standards technically were grade level, they were grade standards, and what I'd like to know is like the A report that you said, like you were given an A or A plus, were those the 1997 standards, because I don't think those were grade level, and they might, or were they the general standards, they were grade standard. So that does make a difference when we're looking at them, so that's one of the things we need to know. They may have the information there, but it's a grade standard. They may have been given A plus, but I don't know if they did in 2004, so if you can find that out, that would be great.
Margaret? Oh, and you can write your computer. Thank you. Margaret?
I know you have an idea on the table, but we take some time to look at these two, and I know there was another question, could we get copies in Massachusetts? I would also like to suggest or put on the table, keeping the end in mind, we're now asking all Missouri 11th graders to take the ACT. ACT has a set of standards. We could maybe start there and work backwards.
Thank you, Margaret. Deborah, would you like to speak?
I was
Or show?
the standards, I probably.
The new blue placement.
Thank you, Dr. Frank.
Yes. It's always been instructive when you teach students through the test or you teach it from the standard. I believe the test should reflect the standards, but the standards have to come second. Should come second to the standards. I've always had a great deal of latitude in terms of how I handle my classes. And I appreciate that very much because it gave me the opportunity to be certain that the students mastered the material and that it covered a broad range of different topics, all of which I thought were essential for their success in college and life. And so, not necessarily teaching to the test, except there were certain test-taking sections before the ACT that we did do. But prior to that, the standards were for the teaching kept separate from that. But it's a good point to have about what's there, but it was certainly not the maple sulfur the word we need to be having. I think we have to really have those standards independent of that, to the extent that it is not, so that it is what is going to be best for the kids going forward.
Okay, thank you. Ann? I'll just put it out as a point of information for the group. Last summer in August, I was at a meeting with the State Board of Education, and Peter Rushing, who's the president of the State Board of Education, after the presentation said, I really don't care where the standards came from, so long as we look good ones. There's some reason that you think that we have to stick with Common Core, understand, and he was echoed by several other State Board of Education members, that they don't care what standards they are, just so long as we have experts that will agree these are the best standards. So don't feel quite so drawn in any one particular. No set of standards should be off the table.
And I don't know, what state are you from?
I'm sorry,
What state are you from? Because I can't keep up with your talk sometimes. It's really fast, and it's a little low.
Oh, okay.
And I just want everybody to hear you.
I will attempt to speak Midwestern.
Lisa, Fred, if you know. Yes.
Yes, I was going to ask again when we would be able to obtain that other information from him, because I would like to have I'd like to have several things in front of me so I know what the a la carte is in terms of what the standards are. Because I mean, the one thing that Massachusetts does have going for it, it has an established track record at that time when it was given a rating. As far as I know, there was not a track record, except in a few, couple of states where it was advanced, and it was certainly not as originally represented.
Thank you.
Another document that we may want to consider then is NCTM, National Council of Teachers of Mathematics focal points, because that's also a set of standards that a math group has worked on. I mean, they have their principles and standards for mathematics in 2000, but then after that, they worked on the focal points.
So I hear you saying, one moment, Lisa is next and then Tiffany, but I hear you saying that you would like copies of Massachusetts standards and another set of standards.
I don't think it's feasible to do the focal points. It's like a book. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I think it's a cost.
They're available for purchase online. I could,
Yes, I don't know if you can electronically.
Right.
Yeah. Electronically, I don't know if we can.
Okay.
And CPM.
but what I was going to say is, I think what we're all kind of bringing up is different points of reference that will help us make a good decision, and I use that word, so I would make a decision, moving forward, just having points of reference that as a group we can work with.
Points of alignment which we can come to consensus.
Yes.
Thank you, Lisa. Tiffany?
I found the Massachusetts ones that Anne was referring to, from, you said 97, right? And it is in their archive, I think, if you want to address it and give it to you. Most of them are, like Kathy said, in groups. So like Milberton's, William Sanders, 5 to 8, they're very broad, but if we want to start there, okay, but I just think we need to pick a place and start, or we're just gonna talk circles around things and never do anything.
Okay. But what did you find?
The Massachusetts standards that she was talking about, which in my opinion,
Sorry, it says standards?
the old ones, yes. It
Oh.
says, going back, curriculum framework, that's it, that's curriculum framework.
This is what I wanted to say, that I had downloaded this with a picture. And that is that when I did a search on Massachusetts and the Common Core, then it said previous ones, and there actually is a set from 2000.
Oh,
So I didn't need to run you, but I got this as a PDF that I can send to you if you want.
If you could send it to her and have her, people print out copies of it, that would be fantastic. How big the document is.
Or just anything in the mind, it's just an pages.
so I have to do it
Yeah,
right.
that definitely has something to that, but yes, the PDF would be awesome.
We're Kathy and then Deborah.
Well, I was just gonna say, because you said this, so all of us have the same.
Yes, that's right.
Send it to Jay. That,
I'm not sure if it's doing copies.
Yeah,
How are
send
they
it.
doing copies? Jay, he's not in this.
I can make the request, and that's their obligation is to provide.
All right, Deborah.
So we're interested in the Massachusetts documents, because something said that they were rated the best by Fordham. What criteria was used, or you know any more about that? Scale or?
I don't. And again, the reason I cited Fordham is because they are recognized nationally in terms of their grading, and they were the experts that Desi brought in for testimony, so I assume they're reputable.
As far as the rating goes, I think that the mechanism there was innate. If you want to look back a few years, and where Massachusetts was in that system, you know, how it, with the information that they were on the
Right, so it's not Fordham University, it's the Thomas D. Fordham Institute. And the guys that's in charge of it is Mike Petrilli, P-R-I-L-L-I. You know, they're just a think tank, they get a ton of money from the Gates Foundation and so forth, and they were paid by the Gates Foundation to sort of statutory standards. And they did great, Massachusetts, California, highly, and I don't know why I don't know the answer as to Minnesota, but I'm curious. Look that up. But maybe I do know, it's just not close to me. But anyway, what Lisa was saying, so it's under the name, these are, you know, Massachusetts and Minnesota, and some of the, who's in between there, New Hampshire. Anyway, those are the states that typically do, you know, the highest on the name test, and so that is, you know, looking at that, you know, standards in Minnesota. And Minnesota is one of the states, they still have their own standards. They said, you know, no, we're not going to go to these lesser standards, so, you know, it's working with them. And so that was, I think, the reason that these suggestions were made. But you can find it if you Google Mike Petrilli, and that'll be the end of the right place. So because.
Thank you, Julie. It's Tiffany, and then Margaret, and then Deborah. Tiffany's waiting, and Margaret.
Well, we know that Missouri is third in alignment with the name. We also know that Massachusetts, when scored, NAEPA's National Assessment of Educational Progress, if we look at TIMS and some of the other global studies, Massachusetts doesn't come close to the top. So if we're competing on a global market, an international market, we're still not there.
Thank you, Margaret. Deborah?
Pass.
Julie?
I don't think that's true. I think that Massachusetts actually does very, very well in international class. So I don't think we should. Missouri's right in the middle, and if our alignment to the need is good, that's, referring to our accountability class, how well our accountability tests align to the need. It's not how well we do. How well we do is right in the middle of the pack, which I don't think is terrible. So I don't want to be understood that that's, I'm not preaching what we do. Just saying, that our accountability test being aligned to the need test is not the same thing as saying that, that we are doing better than Massachusetts. We're not on any scale.
Our conversations around where do we begin? I don't have an answer for you. We have the two documents. We already have those in hard copy in front of us. May I throw out an idea from a non-participant? What if we took, divided them again into 2 teams, maybe 3 teams? I see several computers around. Do some quick research. Let's take 20 to 30 minutes and come up with the key math documents that would be considered. And then have each team say, this is what we found. These are the ones, even if you have 2 or 3 each, somebody could look up the TIM research, the GAP research. So we could see the key points that we've been talking about, locate them, strictly an idea. Something that'll move us, but at least get us looking at and working toward. That would give us time to request the copies you would like to have. It would also give us time to talk to DESE. They have legal counsel who can look into that copyright law conversation that we've been having, which is Martin Van Zandt, it used to be. Is that still Williams, or is that my imagination? But someone at DESE could look into it. We think we've already gotten an opinion on that, but I would like to go down and just get something a little further, if you don't mind. Yes.
Can I also suggest, to answer Nancy's earlier question, what's wrong with the standards? There have been several reviews of the Common Core standards that point out weaknesses. I would think at the very least, this group would want to try and address those weaknesses whenever we come out with. Merlin has done one, Frank has done one, Milton has done one, several. That we perhaps collect those as well, so that we're having really good, complete standards, but don't have holes in them that I know I read Common Core areas.
Can I just say that? I think that all standards are going to have holes in them. All standards are going to have some gaps. So there's going to be tweaks and adjustments that are going to be made to whatever to adopt anything wholeheartedly or point blank is probably not a good thing. But to really look at it, because are there some things that Common Core would change? Sure. But are there a lot of points that I think are really points that I would definitely think we should keep? Sure. Okay, so I think that if we go into it saying this is a document we need to throw out, I would argue against that. I think we need to really be open and look at everything. Because I think the Common Core has some changes that need to be made on it. I mean, any document does. I mean, like you said, after 4 or 5 years, you just go back and change and adjust. So I think we go back and we look at that. But it also has some strengths. So there are good points and there are bad points of any documents, even Massachusetts, even Minnesota. There's always going to be strength and weaknesses. And so we look for those really good things. And I can also say that I think sometimes I'm cautious about reading some reviews that certain other people have written. I think we should read them, but I also think we should reflect on whether we agree with what they say or not.
Okay, and I would agree. I'm just saying you have a number of sources for reviewing, especially if all of them point to the same weakness, say, and that's something that we can address, rather than just ignoring it, say, we have the opportunity to address.
Okay. Also, I think the Common Core, we need to be careful because by law, we have 75 to 76 standards, and the Common Core are quite a bit more than that. All the other standards.
Okay, for clarification, go ahead, Jay, he's dying to add to that. If you could explain that from the standards to the expectations, is that why you?
There was a slide that was referenced that had that big circle and the big red oval, that the Show Me standards, the blue placemat, are the less than 75 standards. That Senate Bill 380 that is the law, those are the state standards, that are not changing, they're unwavering, those aren't really on the table. What we're looking to replace are the clarification of, when you look at, for example, mathematics, how many are there on that side? 6. So you don't have a lot of standards by which to write assessment scores by grade levels. So in clarification of that, that's why the grade level and course level expectations were provided for teachers to know what the targets were more clearly and cleanly. And what's on the table for this work group is, because right now those have been replaced with what are called Common Core state standards, they really are still that same grade level expectation for achievement and for writing assessments. So the 75 state standards will protect some reference to not replacing that, or being cautious and aware of the Show Me standards.
Yeah, that's what she would have to do.
Yes, please.
Can I ask for clarification on that, Jay?
No, I'm not.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood what you said. Okay. So you're talking about the content of your mathematics here, right? And did you say that the Common Core mathematics standards would be here? Is that the Missouri?
Those don't change. Those stay exactly as they are.
Okay, so, and that is 6 of the 75, is that what you mean?
Yes, I believe so.
6 of the
standards on one side and content standards on the other.
So this group, this work group, and how many in total is this? One more time, is that 75 or less than 70? So you're saying that this work group has input on these 6?
I mean,
Okay.
you can't change those.
Can you explain? Okay.
Can you go back to
And
that
all
slide?
the stuff on that little placement, I think it comes to 73.
Okay.
The statute says it would be less than 75. Jay says we're meeting the statute by keeping that placemat, white placemat, that we always call blue. The grade level expectations and the course level expectations, take those and explain what those mean.
Yes.
Okay? So when we now call them grade level and course level expectations, it's the same thing as them calling them standards. So these are performance standards, academic standards, learning standards that are equivalent to expectations for what our terminology right now. It's just a matter of terminology is what I heard you.
And you would, so would you say that those are a further clarification of those 6 things on the?
Replacement clarification, how's that?
Okay, I'm just wondering what the hierarchy is here.
That's the big, this is the big.
I saw the picture.
Overall, I mean, this is up here on the hierarchy. And now we're coming down with math, and other people come down with social studies and English language arts and stuff. So what we have right now, the GFEs and CLEs are above this. They feed into this. They support this.
Yeah.
And so we're looking, what I heard Jay explain is, we're looking to replace or to revise or accept or whatever what currently supports it. And so sometimes we call them expectations, sometimes we call them standards, but it's just a matter of semantics. Add. I just had to add for
think it would be very helpful if we were to send an emissary or something to the other math group to ensure that they know the documents that we are studying from, so that they can also be thinking along those lines, or at least get there, let them know that in advance. I don't think we should wait until we're all finished and spring that on them. I mean, the sooner we do that, the better.
Okay, Kathy? Well, then, should we come to a consensus of what those documents are going to be, so that we can make sure that we're going to look at those documents, that we all agree upon, certain ones that we may not, you know, and again, every document, there may be things we like and things we don't like. You know, that's, we're mathematicians, we learn things we don't, we're always gonna find something wrong. So I think that we need to really look at that and come to a consensus of what faculty give them the input that these, we're putting these on the table to look at to start. But that doesn't mean that's where we necessarily stop. Because this is where we're starting, if we find something else that's better, then we need to be open to that.
Thank you, Kathy.
No, it's a prayer.
Yes,
Yes, that's exactly. I think that our next order of business should be to say, okay, these are the ones where we are starting from, and let them know that at the same time. Also with the proviso that should other things come up, that we would have them as well. But just, I think we need to maintain pretty close liaison with them, so that no more than one working session goes by before we update them on that. And hopefully we'll get similar feedback.
Okay, thank you.
I so
And the thought is where we headed, Lisa, and then Maggie, and then Ann.
Just to clarify, we mean that we are going to share with them the documents that we have decided to start with. That's not a complete final thing by any means. And that should something else we think important comes up, we will share that with them.
and then we'd ask for feedback from them as well, how they're progressing.
Thank you.
If you move that second, you do the motion.
Okay, and a motion is second on the floor. Ann, I'm sorry, were you next?
Well, why don't we finish this motion?
Got it. Well, I guess the motion and the second are up for discussion. Any clarifying questions or conversation about the motion and the second?
Could you specifically state what that motion is so we can have it, because we should probably have this in writing.
The recommendation of our group is that we share with the elementary mathematics group the documents that we will be starting from in our analysis standards. Those documents being Common Core State Standards, the Missouri Department of Higher Education Curriculum Alignment Initiative, the Massachusetts 1997 or 2000, whatever it is, not the 2011, what is the date? 2000 standards, and I think it's sort of, if there is another one that someone wants to add, we'll do that as well.
The ACT tolerated the
That's right, that was it. Okay. And that information is shared with that other group, and we ask for their feedback as well, how they're progressing.
Thank you, Fred and Margaret.
I just wondered if you would also include the NCTM focal points, or did you think that because we couldn't get hard copy of those, that we didn't want to?
Yeah, but we go on that.
I'm sure Desi has the actual book.
Well, why don't we just keep it to that limited number? We want to bring another one in later on, but we can do that.
The Fred made a motion has 4 components as far as documents, and now would you like to?
Okay, and discussion on the motion, maybe. don't think you need that specificity in the motion. The original motion was to have a liaison that talks to them about the different documents we're going to look at. So rather than being specific about what those documents are just yet, let's approve the motion to just have a liaison keep them in the loop.
We're just voting to see if we want to send someone over there to see what they're doing. Just checking.
Thank you. I have a motion, I have a second, we've had conversation.
I was questioning you, were amending the motion to not be specific, that we talk about it, communicate to them, and talk about what those are. That's what I was asking, are you amending your motion?
Because I originally wanted specific ones, so they know where we're starting.
Well, which we can do, I don't know, like she said, if she, were you amending her?
I know that I would amend the motion to say that before that person goes over there, you can have that just involved.
Yes. Oh, I understand. Yeah, I would. I'll do the rest.
Otherwise, you know.
Okay, Deborah had her hand up, and then Margaret calls me a question.
However, if the our liaison approaches our colleagues on that side of the hall and finds out that they're looking at some documents other than those, we may want to add those to the chart.
Sure.
So, but we want to.
So the motion includes 4 documents, but we're also saying that's not an all-inclusive list. That's what the list is at this moment. And you call for the question, we have a motion, a second, all in favor by right hand. Because Jay has to record. I see all in favor, all opposed. Do I have any opposition? No opposition. Motion carries. And we're still in that conversation about our next step. I've thrown out 2 ideas, the one about looking at the 2 documents, and then the one about dividing into public groups, doing some research, putting your ideas and thoughts on a poster paper and us reporting out. That would get us moving, doing some research, having some conversation, and sharing ideas. Your decision. Tiffany.
I would suggest that in the interest of time, whichever ones we choose, we have that many work groups for, like that many little groups for, so each group is looking at that one set to bring back to the whole, like things they like. Instead of every group having to delve into 5 different documents and know those grades 6 through 12.
So right now we have 4 documents. Your recommendation would be 2 to 3 people for each document looking at. Dr. Fred?
I would recommend against that because all too often, a person is only familiar with one document, they become an advocate of that one, as opposed to getting a complete view. Because then everyone's going to interpret things differently. And I like to see things through my own eyes. That's the reason why I like as many as I can to get that input. I don't know how other people feel about that.
Nancy?
I just wanted to say that I am just Google focal points and brought right up and printed this PDF. So I am starting a Dropbox that I'm sharing some stuff with Jay in. So eventually maybe he can, or whoever can share it with everyone. And then you just have the focal points in front of you. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Well, I share Fred's concern, is you bring up what 2 groups are looking at the same document. Wouldn't it sort of be easier to continue to do this as a large group so that we're sure that we're covering all of them?
Well, even if we went into 2 groups so that there was actually some work, some poster papers, some discussion, and even if one group started at the top and went down, the other group started at the bottom and went down, you're looking at all the same documents, but in a different order, so that, because a lot of times you spend more time on your first couple than you do on your last couple. I think just something that gives some ideas and some record of conversation. Yes, ma'am.
Can I?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Would it be, if we were going to divide into 2 groups, because I agree with what you say, is that you want to look at everything, would it make sense and maybe not to have a 6A group looking at the middle school standards and a 9-12 group looking at the middle school standards and see what we like, or do we want to look at that comprehensively as 6 or 12? Because I said maybe working with 6th grade, you might want to look at what all 6th grade say, 7th grade, 8th grade, and high school might want to look at that and then try to come up with what we see if we split it into groups.
I could throw something else up, because I process things differently. When I look at things, I like to be able to look at it in peace and quiet and study it over, and I don't know if it would be productive for us to go home with documents and actually spend some time at home looking them over and becoming familiar with them so that we can come back and have an educated talk about them. You know, things like key on that. So no, I am, or, I guess, in remembering the 7 people who were not here today, having a detailed discussion about what we find in students to get and go to practical. I like the idea of doing research and everybody going out and finding what they think is good to bring back the next time we meet so we can compare notes.
Okay, thank you.
I think that also has the advantage that we can send all those documents to the people who aren't here once we learn who they are, so that they can be up to speed and they have an idea of what some of our thought processes are, and that they understand we want to have what's best here.
I guess, again, we need a difficult one. I do want what's best here too, just like all of you do. I know that we do. But, I didn't take it that way. But I don't think that we're saying, by researching today and coming up with some ideas today, I don't think the ideas that we come up with today are set in stone. Therefore, the people that come in can't add their ideas to it. I don't think that's the way that it would be. And I think, even as we've mentioned that there are holes in Common Core, there are holes in this, what we come up with the first time, there's going to be things that need to be revised about it, because the more we think about it, the more we're going to go back and say, you know, we probably should be more specific here, or we probably should move that there. But it has to start somewhere. And I just feel like we're here, we have made these sacrifices to be here now. And it would be a shame not to at least start the process, because then when we meet again and we do this part all again, we still haven't moved forward. Thank you, Tim.
My question would be, I guess, how do you envision starting the process? To me, starting the process would be, for me personally, to sit down and read through my options and compare and contrast them myself. And then look at them and say, okay, I like this, this, and this, so I have an idea. I just read through one. I don't know for certain what these other options are. For me to start then formulating plans without knowing my whole scope, and maybe I think a year, but that's how I always do everything. I just read everything, and then I say, okay, now I'm ready to start. But maybe just a different thought.
Julie? So the 4 things we're talking about right now, Massachusetts 2000 standards, the ACT, which is not, it's not high and grade, it's just one thing. Well, the poster, maybe I just missed something on that, but it doesn't even have grade exam, it's just the list.
Oh, you're talking about ACT.
ACT, yeah. So Massachusetts ACT, Common Core was the 3rd, and was the 4th the NCTM? Is that, no?
No, it was this,
Oh, the Department of Higher Ed, yeah, okay, so that's more like the ACT thing, but it's not, it's the end point, okay, that's what I was checking, to see if I missed
Since
something.
you can get the focal points, can we add those, or is that?
It's hard part of the access. So you're saying access is already on.
Yes, yeah, I put them in the box. I mean, all I did was Google it, it came up, I printed this PDF, and I put them in a folder that I've already shared with Jay, or I'll share with anyone who wants.
Okay,
That's all I'm doing is putting those documents in that you guys are talking about.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, and this is all I was going to say is, you know, that with looking at these other things, you know, it really does give you a chance to come up with something that's really better. So, you know, I mean, I know it would be nice to have something really simple, you know, that can be the starting point, and maybe some people will want that, and not just me. But, I mean, ultimately that, you know, that we're willing to sort of put these things on the day level and look at them. I think that's a good thing. So that's all I want to say. I just wanted to say that's something that I really feel good about. And I'm just a parent, so I don't, I'm not
Just a
job. Well, I would caution the group to be cautious of how much they bite off here. They have other state standards where groups like this have sat for hours and agonized over their words. We also had to sit for hours and agonize over the words. Part of what made their standards good was because everybody understood them. So I would caution us about not spending a whole lot of time tweaking the individual language. If we like a standard because it's really clear, let's take the whole standard. Does that make sense?
And it has to be, it has to be really clear, because one of the reasons, and this is one of the things I'm going to say about the state of Massachusetts, they may have some brilliant standards, but you can have the best standards in the world, but without doing good professional development for the teachers, and the teachers understanding them, it means absolutely nothing. So I know the state of Massachusetts did an awful lot of work with their teachers in helping them understand and develop how to teach. So that's a big component of it. Doesn't matter what the standards are, if we don't do a good job of helping the teachers understand them, it may seem fair to us, but we have to make sure it's clear to us.
And I realize this is way beyond, and maybe towards the end, but we need to note of this. I really would like to see, along the lines of what Kathy was saying, would this group come up with a letter of recommendation, this entire tribe, come up with a letter of recommendation to the legislature, or whatever the appropriate body is, that we begin in earnest improving our teachers of education guidelines, so that they, as you said, part of this was having teachers come out prepared to teach. You can do it after they graduate, but it's actually better if you actually start teaching this stuff in your colleges of ed. And you know, I would think that a group like this would have Veritas to make a statement to the legislature and say, we need to make these kinds of changes to our degree requirements so that these people, so that our future teachers can teach these kinds of things.
Thank you. And Lisa?
Do you mean, that's so broad, I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah.
Do you mean like a recommendation that the state work to improve the communication of the learning standards with the classroom teacher?
No, I'm talking about in the college of ed degree requirements.
Well, there are already classroom teachers in, you know, a lot of classrooms, and I think a good recommendation would be also, like every piece along the continuum, teachers that are coming out, teachers that are already in the, you know, communication effort be made to share what we have as a state generally. You know, it's kind of the same issue that Julie was talking about with, you know, as implementation is done up to third grade, that sort of thing, versus as implementation is done up to, you know, 11th grade or 12th grade or whatever. Implementation of any change like that. So the teachers are also, you know, there's also a piece for that along the continuum, beginning and, you know, later.
Yeah, I think
just as Kathy said, Massachusetts was a vertically aligned effort on all the levels of education. Because it wasn't just to set standards, right? It was a commitment to professional development, it was a provision of their teacher certification programs, there was a number of things, and that's what really helped Massachusetts. We can come out with great standards, and if we don't have that vertical integration, I'm not sure how far we would go on that. So it would be something that the liaisons could take to the other work groups to say, could you also consider this for when you're all done with the standards, and as a statement that is made to the appropriate body to begin the process of that vertical integration. And I don't know what people think about it.
Well, without professional development, as we said before, that unfortunately, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, money's always tied to that. And so, not just that they support, but they're going to have to financially support a statement like that as well, because PD is not free. Re-educating higher level educators is not, it takes a long time to do as well. So when you talk about the vertical, there's a lot of things that have to fall into place. So we have professional development that's involved and higher education is involved. Because you said it very well. We can have all the best standards in the world, but unless we do a good job of teaching our teachers, helping our teachers, not just teach, because I was raised in an age, I don't know about some of you, but raised in an age where we did procedural. Okay, I was really good at my faculty. Okay, but I don't know how many times when I was first time teaching out to 2-year-olds sitting at the board going, I don't know, that's why this works. Okay, the conceptual understanding of what really has to happen. So we have to have that balance, and our teachers need to know not just do it, because I work with a lot of elementary teachers right now. They can do addition and subtraction and multiplication, addition and fractions, but they have no idea why. Okay, they have no idea why this works so well. They're just doing this, teaching our kids these mnemonic devices of rules that kids have no understanding, teachers have no understanding. So in places I see you shaking your head, so when they're coming out, students don't have an understanding, and we're reteaching again in middle school, we're reteaching again in high school. And when I taught trig 30 years ago, I was teaching kids how to do fractions, and that again was BC for calculators. So we have to do a better job with our teachers, not just with the standards.
Thank you, Kathy. Lisa and then Julie.
I think what we're talking about is in trying to work in some way to incorporate, trying to incorporate a mechanism or recommendation for systemic improvement. You know, something that, looking at it's not just standards. I mean, it's not just PD. It's the mechanism for the whole system and how that will be improved continually. There's not a finite point where you say stop and re-educate. That word sends up red flags for me. And it's a continuous process.
I was going to offer, among other things that I've done that I really learned so much from is teaching the math for elementary teachers class in the teacher preparation program. And I know that in this particular school, we really worked hard to sort of open their minds to all these different things that they would not have, necessarily been exposed to in their own education and so forth. But I do know, and that was a great experience for me. But I do know that in some of those programs, the math class that they take, and I'm not talking about a methods class, I'm talking, that sort of thing, but I'm talking, but that math. And so, but in a lot of cases, that math requirement, besides the methods classes, the math requirement is, college algebra. And I'm so sorry, that is not really very helpful for them. So I know I thought we're supposed to have a representative on the group, and it may be that somebody that's not here yet, but that was appointed by the teacher prep institutions of the state, and I don't know if that person necessarily is going to be someone that, is back in contact with, or if they have, sort of a central information, resource resource to you, like, those are just questions I don't know the answers to, but, if that was brought up, and I do think that's, appropriate for, people to consider, what is the mathematics that elementary school teachers, really do need? I mean, I think for most of us that are here, or high school, we've had, a variety of stuff presented to us, so we probably are not in that target group, but for, the teachers that are in elementary that have, they have to be able to do everything, then there is a sort of a change to the old year like this methodology.
Well, thank you, Julie. We have David and then Kathy.
To Kathy's point, I do the fractions thing at the Career Center because they don't know that they possibly don't procedure. We talk about the why, we do not keep changing with one person maybe knows. Most of them don't even know that. But I talk about the why it makes sense, several other things. For the college output, I'm teaching a physics class at State Fair. First thing we do is vectors, trigonometry. A bunch of them had college output. They're not prepared for that at all.
No.
I teach a different
And
class.
vectors are important.
I teach a different class, which goes over several things, including vectors that doesn't prepare for that. It is not as rigorous as college algebra. It doesn't do rational exponents, but it prepares them for several other things. When we look at standards, not just, we don't want to just compartmentalize things. We want to connect them together so that teachers can understand them, students can understand them, so they can use them. I'm going to be a big advocate for things students can use because I'm career focused.
Thank you, David. Kathy?
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The one thing I think that we need to make sure we do is we're saying these statements about elementary, but I think we really need to say that these are some of our recommendations because that needs to come. When we talk about working together, those things we definitely not only need to look at standards, but look at that so that they can bring that issue up and address it as well. But I don't want to stop just in elementary because I also work with secondary teachers. That secondary teachers that have no idea what the equations that they're using for the equations in the line and the various forms have no idea where they come from, how they come from, where they develop. So I don't want us to lose the secondary people. And I know that sometimes we think, well, they should. And granted, they should if they've just been taught those procedures, and it's not something that's just happened recently. That's been my entire teaching career, going back and working with teachers, helping them understand where these come from and how they develop. Because if they don't know where they come from and they don't know how to develop those concepts, how can they possibly teach children where they come from? They're just regurgitating information, and that's what kids are doing. So writing good standards, putting good standards is a really important thing that I don't think we can emphasize enough. How we need to help teachers understand different procedures, or understand conceptually what they're teaching, and not just at an elementary school grade level. I can still remember my first year teaching calculus, and I was doing one of the proofs, and I go, oh, I could do it in college. I could go through and I could prove it, but I never understood it. I finally had that eye opening about why things work. And that's what we need, is we need teachers that are teaching that understand why, understand the standards and understand why things work, not just regurgitate information.
Thank you, Kathy. And then Nancy. Kathy's too fast.
The why is great. I just worry because the comment I hear from parents, and granted, this is not our group, it's the other group, but they're so focused on the why in elementary, and that's where these ridiculous large drawings that they have to make to do math, because the standard says, add 1 through 10, children should add, subtract 1 through 20, and then it goes on and says, using number lines, yeah, so of course that's what everybody's using because there's something else that's going to be tested, and it's this overkill on why, so make sure you strike that balance out.
And that's what the standards do say, a balance. Thank you.
I would say 2 things. Number 1, hiring a teacher ed person is going to be here tomorrow. The regular person could come, so a different person is coming tomorrow. So you can address that stuff with them. And number two, the way I've tried to explain the reason that we have to have kids understand why and do all of those things, I've tried to explain it to my brother's father-in-law was the latest person who asked me about it. And it is, for most adults who lose algebra, it strikes fear in their hearts. It does. They just are kind of afraid of it because it's not concrete to them. It's so abstract. And the reason it's abstract is they didn't really understand what they were doing with just plain old numbers, with just out in the variables, out in anything. They understood an algorithm, sort of, but they didn't really understand conceptually what was going on. So they said, so they memorized some facts, and then the facts would become so crazy when you throw in all the variables and all the everything that leads to the algebra. And so they just shut down because I don't think they ever really understood what they were doing or what was next and why they were doing it to make it work when it was just numbers. So that I think that's why as teachers who have taught, like I said, the real struggling students through the real gifted students, the gifted students can't make that transfer on their own. But we have to make it so those other kids, they know what's going on, so then it's just, oh yeah, rather than teaching them little tricks and songs and, you know, that they have to understand why.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I agree with what everybody has said. There are some things that you perform better at when you understand why. And there's been a lot of times though in my learning experience, like, you know, with various things that I got very proficient at doing and really didn't understand it until I saw the bigger picture. And then I was like you said, Kathy, wow, you know, and so I think that it's not beneficial maybe to, you know, I mean, we all know the best case scenario is to have a differentiated level to try to fit the teaching method with the learner where they are. I mean, that's, you know, would be ideal. But, you know, because we do have large classes sometimes and varying levels of ability, and within the classes, that job is very difficult. And we you know, seek out methods that we think will be beneficial for everyone. And like Nancy said, you know, you have learners at this level that are going to move on maybe with one or two concrete ideas and be able to do the abstraction. You'll have some kids that they just enjoy doing it. They don't really care why right now. I mean, seriously, you know, sometimes. And maybe, you know, and later in their learning, they will connect it. We don't really know when they're going to make those connections. And, you know, so that's just a thought.
Thank you, Lisa. And I'm just going to say, piggyback off of what you said about differentiation, because I've done differentiation within the high school math classroom. Do that now, working with big teams, with people in the classroom, looking at the various groups of kids and working on that. But it's really a mindset change. The teachers are thinking about how can I work with different groups of kids on specifically what they need. Because as we all know now, if they can't solve a one-step equation, you expect them to solve five, you know, multiple steps. They're not going to be successful at that. So we have to, as a part of the professional development, it's not just math. The math is an important part, but also strategies of how can we work with different groups of kids. Because, you know, we have 33 kids, and I had, what you were talking about, large class sizes. I had 1 year that my smallest class was 32. You know, so huge class sizes, but you have to learn to work with those groups of kids within the context of those rooms. And that goes from your kids
At the best of your ability.
I always taught, it was our philosophy when we went 5 to 7 that everybody had a low class, very entry level low class, middle class and high class, and I had AP calculus and international baccalaureate math on the tower, and I had introductory algebra class in the tower. And they had the same errors. They had the same mathematical procedural mistakes between the two classes. They get the two kids, like Nancy said about compensating. Those kids that were in AP class had learned how to compensate, but we needed to do a better job of helping all of those kids at the different levels. And, you know, I think that's what we look at in education, and I'm not sure we have the power to do that, but we have maybe some power to recommend. Our work is at the grade level expectation. We have the standards, we're at the grade level expectation. And the question is, how does the work move forward? What are we going to begin with? Would it be beneficial for us to write a vision statement? Something to see.
No.
Well, wait a minute. But we don't.
I think there is another bill.
Yes.
I think they're maybe in Jefferson.
Here I got, they are in room 450.
Oh, there.
And this is, you want secondary? Secondary is Truman 400. Truman building, yeah. Sorry. Good walk.
So I have a second piece of paper that needs to come around, and you just initial if your name is spelled correctly. This is what I'm just showing you, and Desi just wants to make sure they've got the name spelled correctly. Yeah.
I would make a motion that we get the documents that we mentioned that we are going to consider, and that we then take those with us and review for whenever we set our next meeting.
Okay. Minute mark. Well, can I second it so I can speak to the motion?
Maggie made this motion, Nancy seconds, and would like to speak.
I'll be happy to share this Dropbox with anyone who comes up with their own email. Okay? That's speaking to it. So I just have this Dropbox. If you have Dropbox, I'll share it with you. And then the documents that I have in there are ACT College and Career Readiness, Common Core State Standards, Massachusetts Frameworks 2000, Missouri Department of Higher Education Curriculum Alignment Initiative, and NCP and focal points. That's what I heard. And even if you get extra, that's okay.
Thank you, Nancy, Deborah, and then Fred.
Is there any benefit, seems to me there would be, I could be wrong, instead of having the standards by grade level, to actually recommend them by course? What would be the issue with that?
I'm sorry, Kathy, and then Margaret, no, Kathy, yeah, well, right now, with the Common Core, there are, they have a key say, and Nancy's put in there too, and the table does say what should be in Common Core. And specifically, because there are standards that the Common Core has, if you start off with one, you really don't finish until after two. And so reading that portion of it will probably be very beneficial for us for the 9 through 12 part, because it helps 6 through 8, but it does outline through 12, but we'll look at that. And you're familiar with this much too.
I
think we've got Deborah, Margaret, and Julie.
So you're saying they are delineated by course in an appendix?
Appendix A is another document, and Nancy's included.
Okay. And then the other thing I would just add as a response is that I know that the shift now is that Alpha 1 is actually going into the middle school. So maybe it would be beneficial for those to be.
Thank you, Deborah. Julie?
What I would just go, as to that issue, for example, in my district, we put 100% in our careers in Alpha 1. I say that 100%, we do this for so many kids that don't. But, of all the regular education kids, they all go into Alpha 1 in 8th grade. And I know that you sometimes hear about that the current standards are making that less, less recommended or whatever. And those grades cut back on the number of kids that they're putting in Alpha 1. We are not. And our board has said
we're not. We're gonna keep doing that. And we don't let them get a D and move on. They get an IP and they get to just stay in it the next year. So, so just in case anybody's gonna say, well, do they all need it? No, but a lot of them do. So here's my point. So they are set up as Chet Algebra 1, Geometry Algebra 2. We have sort of taken a position in Missouri that we're not doing integrated math. I don't necessarily, I don't see it as a problem, but when you are looking at that and thinking about that 8th grade stuff, I wonder, and this is just an idea to put out and have people think about, but I wonder if it doesn't make sense to put your middle school stuff as a grade span, because if you do take a kid and put them in algebra 1 as an 8th grader, they've got to get all that stuff, somewhere. So if you have a little bit more flexibility with that, maybe that's kind of a detail, but it is something that is on this issue and we're thinking about at some point.
Thank you, Julie. I have Margaret, Nancy, and then Tiffany, and then Kathy.
You may be aware of it or not, there is a free app, Mastery Connect, of the Common Core State Standards, and you can search by topic. So as you're comparing across documents, if one document mentions graphing functions, you can search graphing functions to see if it appears in Common Core. It might just be a time
Thank you, Margaret, Nancy.
I'm not trying to rain on any parade, and I'm not doing anything, but, I think that when the legislators heard testimony from lots of people, they heard a lot of things about the English language arts appendix. People questioning the selections that were in there for reading, etc. And therefore, part of the bill, not that it doesn't say you can't look at it, but I just want to make sure that we're on board with it. The State Board of Education, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, is prohibited from requiring local districts to use any appendix to the Common Core state standards. I don't think they even had a clue there was a mathematics appendix. But I want to make sure that we're transparent here with what this does say. I think they were talking about ELA. That's all I heard in House and Senate hearings. But there is an appendix for us, and all it does is say which standards to use in which course. It doesn't have things that some people found offensive.
Well, and it is that they just won't require it.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy, Tiffany, and then Kathy, and then Lisa, and Julie, I'll add.
I was just gonna say, you guys were talking about, course level in middle school. And there is in Appendix A, there is a 7th grade accelerated, which takes all of the 7th grade standards and half of the 8th grade standards. And then there's an 8th grade Algebra 1, which takes the other half of the 8th grade standards and all of the Algebra 1 standards that your auditors track and take. So in our district, we don't put everybody in Algebra 1. We say that for honors kids, but if in 6th grade, going to 7th, they're in the honors group, then they get all of 7th grade and half of 8th. So they're essentially covering a year and a half. But then the next year, they get another year and a half before they go on. So it is kind of still by course, even in middle school for those accelerated kids.
Thank you, Tiffany, Kathy.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh.
Thank you, Kathy. Lisa?
I was just going to say that I believe Nancy is right about the appendix. I don't know that for a fact, but it seems like in the general public, most of the concerns have been with respect to the English recommendations, and the reason that the appendix may be appropriate here is as Deborah said, it's considering not the legislation says, I guess, or we don't necessarily have to do grade level, but it would be helpful to have courses, because everything that we do in the standards, but our words are going to be guides for school districts. They're not requirements. But how much guidance is appropriate how much is inappropriate, that kind of thing. And the decisions that are made on that could affect the assessment piece at the end, which we have nothing to do with. But, we have to step back and think about all the pieces. So.
Thank you, Lisa. Julie? All right, Ann?
How does that line up with what you're doing with the SBAC tests in terms of if you're not in the same sequence?
Carson, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
She was looking at Our seventh grade students will still take the seventh grade math test. And then our eighth grade students who are getting high school credit for Algebra 1, they don't take the eighth grade math test, they take the Algebra 1 EOC. And so that kind of helps, it doesn't help as far as, I guess those seventh grade accelerated students, they're getting extra that they don't absolutely have to have for the seventh grade math test, but they're getting it because it's preparing them to be successful in that eighth grade Algebra 1 test. And then the other part of the eighth grade standards that they haven't learned yet, that they moved to eighth grade Algebra 1, they need those to be still successful in algebra. So rather than saying, okay, seventh graders, you have to cover all of your seventh grade and all of the eighth grade standards, so that you can go on algebra next year, they split it into two so that to make it more manageable.
Thank you, Julie, and you.
Well, I will say one thing. I don't know exactly how this works with the testing rules, but it's my understanding that waiver to not let the eighth graders, to not force the eighth graders to take the SBAC test, and I might not be current on this, but that had been Betsy's plan so that everybody continue to do the Algebra 1 test, and then if you are getting Algebra 1 and you don't take the SBAC math. However, my last understanding was that that's revolving in the waiver. Now, that might not be.
And it's been passed. It hasn't been passed, but
I don't know that
they haven't said that.
We
denied.
Yeah, I had it on some pretty prior authority, so.
Thank you, Julie. Maggie, I think.
The protocol varies by district. My daughter took Algebra 1 in seventh grade, and she had to take the other seventh grade math. She took the young the eighth grade, and she took the eighth grade math test as well. But I think that's district 1 good scores, and the district scores.
How long ago was it?
It was, she didn't do it.
It just started changing.
Yeah, it's changed.
There's still a motion on the floor.
Is there a motion?
There is still a motion on the floor. All of this is dialogue, so I'm going to remind the group that there is a motion that Maggie has made that Nancy seconded. And the motion was to get the documents for consideration.
Thank you.
So I would assume this was all part of the dialogue, but it seems to have expanded.
I should call this a question. May I call this question?
Yes. Margaret called for the question. We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. And Jake, you want to read the motion again?
Maggie makes a motion that the work group get the documents for consideration.
And they also have included on that, and that we have those so that we can take them home and read them, so that the next time you convene at a later
That may have been your intent, but what was actually said was for consideration. I don't think it was clarified for, because I'll need to know whether it needs to be, that would be an amendment.
I thought I had
You had earlier in the day, you made mention that that's how you process. Yes, I have that as well, but on that particular motion, it was making sure that we had access or to get them. And Nancy posed that a second with that she would be able to provide everyone digital versions. But if we need paper versions, that will be also something else.
Okay, we have a motion, a second on the floor. All in favor? Oh, we didn't have a second? No.
I got
I'm trying to stay alert and on TV. All in favor, a show of hands. All opposed? Looks like all are in favor. Thank you very much. Get documents. It's 2:45. We're scheduled to go to 4 today. Tomorrow, we're scheduled to go from 8 to 3. The question is still, where do we go from here? We're getting the documents. Right?
Since we have the documents and we're getting them, I think now probably an appropriate time to let the other group know.
Okay, Nancy, that's what I was gonna say.
That's a second.
No,
Closest to the door, go on.
That is not where I was going. I was supposed to give something to Sharon, so I was gonna go give it to you now. If you want me to just drop this off at Ann McCoy's, I'll be happy to do that, but or tell her out in the hallway so I don't disrupt her work. That is not my one, because I would somebody sent me.
Let's hear Ann, yes.
I was gonna move the current PR liaison to go.
I'll go down the door.
Ann made a motion, or nomination. Ever seconded, all in favor? All opposed? And he is the liaison to the other groups. Tomorrow, we're gonna do all the official stuff.
Okay, so we're liaison all the time, all group, was it just to run over this information today, or? Because with other members to be on, I don't know.
Correct.
Who seconded Ann's motion?
Ann's motion for the moment is Deborah.
Yeah, I motion that we can make that.
So is there a chance that we may be rescheduling some of those dates that we received? I know there was some talk of that at the beginning of our meeting today, and if so, when would those decisions be made?
And if I can get into that. And the old superintendent here, let me think a moment. Desi has scheduled the rooms, officially rooms, all the arrangements for work for the group for 6 days. And they intend to leave those reservations for room. Getting rooms here has to be done a little ways ahead of time. So they intend to leave those reservations in place so that if groups decide they aren't going to work on those days, the days will be available. The days that they put on our calendar, and we're supposed to be support for you. Record keeping, recording, and facilitator. We're a support to the work group. So for us, those 6 days are what we have. I've heard one legislator say that you can make those changes, and I saw a letter that says you can make those changes. And you certainly have that ability to do that. But as far as the arrangements and an organization that has the ability to get us lunch tickets and to get us a room reservation and to make those arrangements, in all the years I've been a part of education, anything the state board is to do, DESE does the legwork. And maybe I've misinterpreted that, but through my career, that's the way that has been. So as a work group, the rooms are set for those 6 days. You can certainly go longer than that if the work can't be done in those 6 days, by all means. And they've said that from day one. Yes.
My question would be is, let's say we keep the 6 days they are, but we may not be able to drive in this from, as he says, his class. What's the ability here for wireless for him to be able to Skype into meetings? Because we've had that discussion about people being able to Skype into meetings while we're here for somebody that may not be able to come back. Is that, can we look at investigating if that's a feasibility, that would be an option on the table, so that if somebody came for part of the time, could not drive down, that they can do that with those dates that are on the calendar.
Skype an option, and we can certainly ask DESE that this afternoon. Lisa?
I think that's a really good suggestion. I was just going to say, considering that we're getting documents and there's been mention that we need time to process those, I think that the third and fourth meetings would be premature, and that we might want to just keep the fifth and sixth on our schedule, and then go forward after that, or maybe just the sixth one. I appreciate the fact that people put the schedule together. I think that maybe our needs are changing as we're considering what we're going to be looking at. Just a thought.
Thank you. And
Maybe the best thing to do at this point, since the target was October 1, and maybe that's, where people were headed in terms of being prepared, can we consider a conference call with everybody next week, like on the 30th, to talk about, briefly go over what the plan is for the work, and talk about what dates we look for the group as a whole?
Margaret?
I guess, I'm not sure we can find dates that all 17 people will agree on, is why I like Kathy's idea of Skype, because if I can't be here for part of it, I can get at least see part of it. And or Jay, can you tell me, as far as notes, records, are those on the website? Are those accessible? Are those?
I'm to turn the notes in. Outside of that, I don't know. I do know that the video itself will be processed and then uploaded in its entirety for public viewing.
Kathy, how long after you said that the video is going to be uploaded, but how long after the session is over, do you have any idea?
It's going to be turned over to the tech department at FD. And so it will be however long it takes for them to take all of 8 groups and to upload a full day's work.
It's not just us, it's not all of us, so okay.
I think maybe some of the challenge in what we're trying to do in terms of planning is because we still have not finalized what our process is to do these standards. We've got, the support documentation coming in, which is good. We've also had to review it. But maybe it'll be easier to determine how often and how intensely we need to meet when we have a little more detail from the process we're covering by grade. And let's spend the first 3 hours on a grade, or maybe by subject. Maybe till we get to that level of detail of the process, it's going to be hard to figure out how much time we need. Because there may be a lot of this stuff that can be done through emails and things back and forth. We don't have to physically be in the room.
Nancy?
I think that the time to meet these beginning meetings, I don't see the 6 meetings as getting anything done. That's just, that's just, but I think that the 6 meetings to get our grounding and to know kind of where we're headed, and then kind of subgroups meet, and then have a meeting to report back, make sure we're still kind of on the same page, I think that would be good. I personally would prefer to do set those meetings while we're in a room. To me, conference calls are crazy. I have like groups of 8 people, and you don't know when someone's going to talk, and some people have phones that delay the time, and it's, and it gets a little distracting for the communication for me when it's just but it would be nice if we could just, for me, if we could set our meetings here, that we're going to get our grounding, and then kind of say how we're going to section off of there.
This is the email address of the people next door for you to. No, they have a Dropbox version just like you have. And if you would send our 4 documents, what we have when we send it to that address, then they will be on the same page as we are. It turns out that they're going to go along the same general lines. As a matter of fact, what they would like to do is they would like to come in here to discuss when the next meetings will be.
Are they going to share with us?
They will share with us as well. I did not give them mine or yours. I just told them. bring the word back here, but requesting to come in and discuss with us what our next speaker will be, because they also feel it would be good for the handoff and everything, to have that type of coordination between groups.
Okay, will you take a break before they come in? Let's take 5 minutes.
It'll probably take 5 minutes to get here.
Is that what this group wants to do first?
I mean, does the group want to do that?
Invite them over.
Do we want to talk first, or do we want to invite them over and hullabaloo it? You know, get it all.
But are they discussing changing the schedule? And I know that's.
Yes, because they would like to do it at the same time in the week as well. And I think it'd be good to do that.
Okay, and then I have to go back and repeat. According to the information I've been given, DESE, they're staying with their room reservations, their room assignments for the 6 days. They made all that, it's on a spreadsheet. And, I mean, it's a huge activity, even on the
Saturday, we may not get it.
Correct.
Right, but at least, you know, for the next one, we have the next one, the 1st, 2nd, the 20th, 21st, or 21st, 22nd, whatever. The next one scheduled, that'd be great. It's just that they're feeling a lot of pressure too, reviewing documents. So anyway.
Jay?
Just a quick one, clarification on the documents. We're sharing them all electronically through Nancy. I have that listed. Will there be some requirements for or requests for paper copies of any of these? Because I will have to still be processed.
They didn't ask that.
And I'm asking this group because I know that you guys have.
Well, I prefer to have a paper copy.
Of all the documents. Of all, in other words, because I think the College Career Ready Standards is about 300 pages. If that might be right.
Yeah. Stop at 150.
I have to make that request, and I want to make sure that I capture the group name as well as the group needs. And so if the group needs and wants paper copies, I need to go ahead and forward that or make that request.
Clarification, is it the 350 pages just for the mathematics portion?
No, I think the ACT readiness one has both.
For which one?
ACT, College Career Readiness. I think they're
Let me take a look.
they're kind of large. But anyway,
And that goes back to this document. We didn't really need the whole document. We just needed the pages that were about mathematics. And so that would be something that, if we were requesting documents, I think we should be specific about, because if we want Massachusetts, we need the entire document, or we just need the components of what we're looking at. Now, they need pieces, we need pieces, but if we want the other pieces, then we can print it on the home.
Sorry, the thing that I have, maybe I have the wrong thing. I have ACT, College and Career Readiness Standards Mathematics. That's all I printed. It's 12 pages. This is 200, I can't remember. 50 something. But I think that's, I don't think it's, well, this is including appendix 1.
So paper copies for all?
I don't think that is.
No, but, I'm saying the appendix is 149, and
If it's, and I would say, I would like one if it's not, if it's not 150 pages, because it's a lot easier to sit down and have a document in my hand than to have to read through the screen with my phone.
Appendix A, the only portion of it that I think we would look at, because it is split into 2 sections. You have the high school courses and you have the integrated courses. We need to look at the Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and then maybe the document that talks about a portion of it that talks about the accelerated in grade 7 and 8. So it's not like the entire document, but we would want to sit down and look at it and be specific about the pages, because that's a lot. A lot that we would look at probably.
So someone it sounds as if that we're at various levels and we need to refine which sections might be important. Might be the whole document, might be a part of the document.
Right.
Who might be the person who would help make that decision and then tell me what copies to get?
Should be a couple of us. Do we want to take a few minutes right now to the document and then decide what we want to do with it?
I have another question following that before you break.
Nancy?
I need to make sure that we are meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
There are meetings tomorrow. You better be. It'll be like. Yes.
So yes, we're meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
I make a motion that we meet tomorrow and start at 7
At what?
I'm sorry, I'm driving home and back tomorrow.
So I don't know now.
It was a good try.
High school folks, we start on paperwork again.
Anyone else?
I would second that we meet tomorrow.
Tomorrow, we're meeting tomorrow.
Can I ask discussion before we go? What exactly are we going to do tomorrow?
Nancy?
I'm not sure what we're gonna do tomorrow, but I have a hotel room here tonight based on these.
I mean, that's not a very good reason to.
It is.
That's $100.
It is.
Kathy?
Well, but I think that we all have this document. So there's no reason why we can't all go back through and read and reflect upon what's there. Do we agree? Do we disagree? For the mathematics portion of it. How many of you have a copy of the standards, the NC10, or not the NC10, the Common Core standards? You have a copy. Who does, maybe I should better raise my hand, who does not have a copy of the standards?
That's that blue book, right?
Right, yes. So is there anybody that does not have a copy of the standards?
I don't have the appendix.
Okay, you have everything about the appendix. Okay, could we then come in and say that tonight we would go through and reflect and read what's in here? You know, that we could go through and read and reflect on the mathematics that's here for the college and career readiness. And we can talk about that and then maybe say some component of the Common Core document and see what we can, so maybe 6th grade, maybe just pick a curriculum. Something that we would all look at, because I just read this, didn't take me very long. Okay, it's just a couple of pages in here actually, the mathematics, it's very short. So, yeah, so.
We've done a motion on the floor
Thank you,
also.
Kathy, please, sir.
I was just going to add to what she said, but I think we need to look at there's a few different spots here. Page 25 through 29 has the entry-level competencies for math. There's cross-disciplinary pages also that people might want to consider. There are engineering competencies on page 51, and that goes through the next competencies on 55. Actually, 50. Some of these are cross-disciplinary, not just math. And then there's also exit level competencies, and you might want to read what the definition at the beginning of the document is for what those words mean. The exit level course competencies start on 77 as the math part. Let's see, I'm trying to find it. Or I may have missed it. There's exit levels also for those of you who are, you know, because when, I think it's good to look at that just to think about college and career ready, what that means.
Okay.
So there's several things in there that you would see on the index. Consider.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And the motion on the floor is? Jay, what is the motion?
Meet tomorrow, says nothing. The motion on the floor is meet tomorrow.
And we'll meet tomorrow. Who seconded that?
Margaret seconded, made some modifications that the posted time is not 7 a.m.
Sorry, man.
Have a motion, a second, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 yeses. Nays? All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 3 opposition? All abstain? 1 abstention. The yeas have it. We will meet tomorrow, beginning at 8 a.m. We will dismiss at 3 o'clock. I hear the conversation around the documents that we're going to look at. Maggie?
I will let you know that I will be publishing because I have to do tonight class around late and it's once a week.
Okay, thank you. I may write with you, no.
Okay, should I go next door and I'll give them the email address of Mr. Ross, so they can send their documents to him, or and then I'll write them over.
Okay, is that okay with the group? We know what our assignments are for tonight and what our plan is for tomorrow? Oh, yes, so let's see what we can take. Yeah.
So is this the report you were talking about? Shirley Brown? You were talking about Shirley. And the presentation.
I think that's what they were called, kind of problems. That's why I thought she was talking to you about. What?
Anyone else want to have their name?
Yeah, it's just a little surprise.
Yeah, that was just a little from my guess's thing.
Because I know Sherry had a role in it for secondary mathematics. So we wrote those, although if you go back and look at what our PF is pretty closely aligned with what we were doing at the time. So we reworded a little bit differently. But we might find out where the final draft of that copy is.
You can look at it, or anyhow, I printed one off last spring. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was, I thought I would print one off before it disappeared.
Yeah, because when you were talking about that, because I shared that one with you.
Right, so.
Which, by the way, is something in the Berkeley's as well.
And interestingly, I mean, in the district that I was with at the time, we wrote everything to go with those learning goals, and we liked them. We wrote our curriculum, we wrote after two. I think it took it to a very modern approach.
We were pretty awesome.
No, I know, but I mean, and then, I realized we never actually about it, but we actually, so I'm really opposed to, looking at that as a document, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know if I can find it around anywhere, so I'm saying our laptop.
I have my hard copy.
Do you have the, I have it. And I think it has neighbor from here. I do know it's called 79. It's up. That may know where that is. So,
Yeah, I didn't drop off.
I can tell you, I can tell you that information, so.
Well, the email was saved, but I'm sure it's not HB.
I can look and see if I can find it on my computer. Is that all you?
Yeah, I know you do, but I know we probably have that down. It has, and we have the draft.
So, it's not pure.
So I might think,
Well,
within the last few months, I want to say.
You'll have to have an assay of the Dropbox,
April.
each of the Dropbox.
I printed a copy, and I think I saved the copy on my computer too.
Yeah.
And I can email that to you.
And I can see that. See that is pc.rr.com. That's my email, or I can see my basic.
Anyone else on this, or I?
See that is
See that.
Yeah.
And you have this on the one.
I already shared it.
I just figured it out. Is it? I
I get it.
Well, there is, once you go through, just like somebody said, you work at 76, you like it, everything, you want it, 6 months, that's not like that, they go on. So I get there at 6:15, 6:30. I get there about 6:45, so. I get there and then I go home, I will either work between 3:30 and 4 or after 6.
Yeah, me too.
Because if I'm not in there by 4,
Yeah, that's exactly like that. If I'm not over by 4, then I'm like, I'm trying to get out by 7.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I went back in on Sunday for about 2 days, so. You know, I said,
I was looking at something.
I know. 4 big hours on Sunday, 8 and 9, and 3 or 4 on Saturday.
I don't know what parts of that
That's what we do.
It is.
We got our classified employees are required to time in and out.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what I started doing that April 1st, just to keep track, because it was optional for us.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
We have to log our hours that we do, and if you want the real hours, or you don't need hours, because it's not.
I'm scared.
I do real hours.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing, because we can log how many hours we actually put in. So when I have a 6-hour work week, I say, oh, okay, fine, try to keep that on there. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. Well, all right.
Okay, babies.
So, Greg, what kind of work are they doing next?
What are they doing? They're just discussing this, it sounds like there are discussions about what we're saying last one.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yes. And they are meeting tomorrow. And what their suggestion is that we start off at 9 o'clock with a joint session. And then go from there. At 9, yes.
So when are we starting in?
But I want to mention to everybody here what's actually going on.
Start at 9? It just looks like they're.
Isn't there when we're starting, Brent? 8 tomorrow. Oh, it's 8 tomorrow?
But let's keep it an hour in before they can do.
Oh. I thought they said 9. Hey, maybe they got a few people sleeping in.
Maybe. That's for those that look at them.
It could be that they don't have to start.
Yes, my daughter just started at Mizzou.
Oh, are we meeting with Sunday at 8 tomorrow?
Scheduled for 8 to 3.
Okay, so we're here at 8 o'clock, and see if they want to come back. What they want to do. If they're meeting at all.
Oh, wait, we're all working together all day tomorrow. Did you say that we're all working together at the same time in the same room tomorrow?
We'll see about that.
But I was like,
We haven't even got our own protocols figured out.
that's what I'm thinking.
No. It's just top of the see where.
Oh, he said we're having trouble getting ourselves focused, working at harder.
She likes to have one group as much as we have them over a much less than a final share at your table and matters because from all over together. It doesn't mean you can't have a dialogue.
Right, this is where.
Oh, well. Where is State Fair? So do you know? No, I never mind. I'm good. Hey, Fred.
I actually have these things, I can resign them, but if you would like to, because you're not really known, I understand.
Yeah.
It's a standard policy in the appendix.
You know, I have a box.
Actually,
I
Rob,
have
I
a box.
think-
Got a box in the home.
Yeah, I have 5 or 6 copies.
Go to the box. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you want to see my scribbles?
Nancy brought a nice clean copy of it. I brought it back. Look, I even got an old fashioned one.
I had my husband go out and get that copy today, I said, it's just.
I'm taking that for our You no longer get these big down, they come. I mean, you know, I know. How many people have old?
Not serious.
Look, see, they're highlighted, they're gone here. See, they'll probably look at those software. And you have your line in the comments.
You can only discover what it is that came preloaded the last time. Well, that's why I look at all these things and these expectations of kids. You have to do this benchmark quicker. This point is this point, but this point is this point. My son's not gonna do that. Because he can't get out. That's what this is. I just don't know. I don't want to see especially in the spring, we see a lot of stuff that has to work. Not gonna get overly complex.
I'm just here to observer.
Yeah, just in case you want to leave any comments.
I will. Thank you very much.
Teaching are hard, but teaching 2,500 of these kids come in preloaded differently. That's awesome. That's why parents are getting it's not that hard. The challenge is to teach all these different things. All these capability requirements of the that you guys have to do. The teachers like,
The math practice is super important. And
The training that came through office.
Are we all back?
is she doing the workshops and practice?
They were all sharing.
That's that one. Okay.
Yeah.
They're, okay, so
Okay, we're back together. Good stretch break, always nice. So, Greg, did you want to comment?
This is one question. And it's outside.
You want to go get her?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were sitting here.
She was, she just said,
Okay.
she has a bunch of meetings.
I thought I saw her, that's what she's speaking of.
Yeah.
Either that or see if she's.
I'll tell her.
No, she's good. Oh, no, because we love her.
She said, okay.
Okay. Rather than getting together with that other group now, they would rather wait until tomorrow morning. And have just a general meeting, just to, not to talk about things in general. It sounds like a lot of their discussions are going on the same lines, trying to figure out how to do different things as well. So they, and at that time, we can also talk about what we need next year. Because they also thought it was a good idea to do it at the same time.
So when you say that I'm gonna think later, I would, that can get really open, because I've been in this world, it would take about 3 hours to talk about things, so can we put together a preliminary, put together a preliminary agenda of what we can stay focused on, and what we're not gonna focus on for that meeting, otherwise, like, we've got somebody that, I don't know, Jay, if we can report out, we have kind of a report out, that notes something specific about what we talked about, and we would all agree to, maybe meet by ourselves for a short time in the morning, they meet by themselves for a short time in the morning and have somebody that would report out and then have some discussion. I don't know.
The meeting that we would have with them would start about 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So we would have time to do that in the morning. I would think that as far as what we would cover, just rationale of different document selection so far that we've come up with. And I think that would be plenty.
Yeah,
And then that as well as the schedule one call.
I just want to keep it very, very focused, because we don't have that much time, and we don't have time, all of us are extremely busy people, we don't have time to wait, so if we can really get focused in, get targeted in on what we need to do, rather than something that's drawn. Okay? So we have a plan? Yes, Tiffany?
I would say, could we, to help me be more focused, could we make kind of a preliminary, this is for sure the things we want to start on tomorrow, or, I mean, because it seems like, and it may just be, we've had a lot of really good discussions, but I don't feel like we're very focused yet, and so I feel like if we had an agenda where we just have, even bare bones agenda, but something that we could, and catch ourselves, okay, we're off topic here, we can focus back here, maybe that would be more beneficial.
Okay, Brett?
I thought that we had already had that from a suggestion from Kathy about what we're discussing. We're going to talk about this document right here.
This document, in the Common Core, what we have at the both of them.
Well, this one, and then if we have something on the, we do that specifically, because you start with that, we'll see how far we go.
Brett, we've got Timber and Kathy, and
Yeah, I was just saying.
everything else.
So to facilitate our discussion about those documents, do we plan to utilize this protocol that we were provided? Or something different?
I don't know, haven't looked at that.
This protocol lends itself well to the Common Core standards, and I don't know if it lends itself well to.
This document, that's right.
Right, I don't know, because I haven't had a chance to review this one.
Because, well, this document is just high school standards. Doesn't have middle school standards on it, and that's why when I originally brought it up, I didn't just say this document. I said it made some portion of the Common Core specifically because this is high school, that if we would look at starting ground, if everybody would agree to read those pages that I think Lisa brought up, which are really valuable pages to look at those pages, as well as maybe read just the 6th grade, so at least we can look at a start in the middle school, because we do have that, where we don't have pages.
I think it would be helpful and help us and help me focus if we did have a protocol. But if not this, then something else.
And that's what I get.
So we would use the protocol to look at the Common Core, the 6 and 7, and then we would go to this other document. Okay.
No, we were starting with the other document.
The other document, and then the other one is for the middle school.
Right, and then perhaps some discussion protocol for how we will go forward. So I'd like to review this in more detail first.
And even though this was written for the Common Core document, maybe we could do that kind of a protocol and just look at this and say, for this document, I read this, I have a question, what information you need about this, what area should we discuss that maybe we can pilot something similar no matter what document you're using, whether you're using Common Core standards, whether you're using this document, whether you're using Massachusetts, it doesn't matter. We should come up with something that we agree upon, that we can read and reflect on. Margaret?
I think that will work if we, instead of putting the standard down, put the page number, and even if we put first paragraph, second paragraph, bottom of the page, I think we could all, relate where we need to look.
Do you have additional copies of that?
Just this one?
No, just the ones that,
Can you put that in the Dropbox?
It's on that link, those of you who signed, when I put the DESI thing up there, it's on that DESI link.
And it's a Word document,
Yeah.
so you can type that.
But I'll be happy to just drop it in Dropbox.
Yeah.
No, it probably has my name on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the.
Feel like that first grade.
So Margaret mentioned that rather than have it say standard in the first column, that we note the page and maybe the concept, or is that what you meant?
No, yes, you may answer.
I did look through that document and they are numbered, you know, like number 1, number 2, number 3 on that page. So if we put page number and item number.
Okay.
Which is what I was gonna suggest for tomorrow, where they have numbers on them, so we could probably do that. I think we should probably put down both page and a number to go along with it, because we have algebra 1 through whatever, geometry 1 through 7, so I think it would help us if we were all consistent. And put down, maybe at the top, the document that we're looking at, okay, so that we have that clarification, look at what page number we're looking at, and what specific number or standard that we're looking at, and then question that we might have about that, and then what do we need to talk about that we have some specifics on that, so that we can all get agreement. Now, when we look at other state documents, we need to see when we might need to tweak this form a little bit, but I think this is kind of a pretty general guideline of what document you're looking at. You may have to put a little bit different information down if you're not looking, so that you won't forget it. Thank you.
We have a plan for tomorrow. We're going to look at 2 documents tonight, discuss them. Discuss those documents, meet with the other group at 9. Anyone interested in adjourning for the day?
Yes.
You don't care if you recognize or not.
We have a motion to adjourn, a second, all in favor? Thank you very much. We'll meet here tomorrow at 8 a.m. And I will look for some more of those paper documents. Yeah, but it's, I can do a Word document, just type on that. So you have one back to those others, you can type on.
Oh, I'm driving, you're home, driving back. I have my computer with me, but I'll do that.
You don't have to do it.